Chapter 61. Standing Up for Friends. Seeing Harry and his friends overwhelmed by the rumors, Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He had sensed Filch's approach, but had chosen to prioritize his trip to the Forbidden Forest, indirectly causing their predicament. His guilt, however, was fleeting. After all, his presence had spared Hermione from losing points, which was a small consolation. Yet Ethan couldn't shake off the desire to help them. He detested campus bullying, and saw this as an opportunity to irk Gryffindor further. After breakfast, Ethan made a bold move. He walked over to the Gryffindor table and sat next to Harry, drawing attention from all around. With people packed tightly on either side, he raised his voice, wishing for a magical enhancement to ensure everyone heard him clearly. "Leave Harry, Ron, and Neville alone," Ethan declared. "Those who shun you over this incident are merely fair-weather friends." "A friendship that ends over such a matter is not genuine," he continued, "and it's not worth your sorrow to lose such superficial connections." His words earned him glares from the surrounding Gryffindors, but Ethan pressed on, undeterred. "If I were in your shoes, losing 50 points for Ravenclaw, I believe my classmates would offer criticism but then join me in earning back those points rather than kicking me while I'm down." The Ravenclaw's presence swelled with pride at his words. Consider Potter, whose Quidditch prowess led Gryffindor to victory over Slytherin, earning more points than the deduction. Yet, his classmates fixate on a single mistake, ignoring his contributions, Ethan pointed out. And the Weasley brothers, despite their frequent point losses, remain beloved. This inconsistency reveals a hypocrisy within Gryffindor, a house that claims to value courage and loyalty. He looked around, noting the mixed reactions. Some Gryffindors appeared ashamed, while George and Fred Weasley wore their pride openly. True Gryffindors should celebrate their peers' successes and share in their failures. Yet what we see here is far from that ideal. Even Slytherin, with all its flaws, shows more unity than this. Slytherin smirked at the backhanded compliment, while the Gryffindors were left in a mix of anger and shame, none daring to speak up. Ethan's words significantly lightened the burden of guilt on Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They looked at him with gratitude, recognizing a true friend who stood by them in adversity. However, Ethan's speech, while stirring, wasn't entirely accurate. It was a clever mix of truth and manipulation, particularly his claims about Ravenclaw's hypothetical support. His argument suggested a unity that might not hold under actual scrutiny, but in that moment, his words were exactly what his friends needed to hear. More united and sensible than Gryffindor, Ethan's status within Ravenclaw differs significantly from Harry's in Gryffindor. If Harry's reputation could be described as worship, then Ethan's would be awe. Individuals admired may still face ostracism for extraordinary actions, as equality is expected. However, those revered can act extraordinarily without inciting anger or opposition. Ethan achieved this revered status through his exceptional academic prowess, his demonstrated strength in defeating a troll, and his accomplishments in Quidditch. Ethan's motivation to support Ravenclaw was strategic, aiming to counteract the bullying prevalent within Gryffindor. The majority within Gryffindor could easily bully Harry and others, creating a passive acceptance of their behavior. To challenge this, Ethan sought to turn the bullies into the minority by rallying the other three houses against Gryffindor. His public praise of Ravenclaw was a tactic to garner support, while his provocations towards Slytherin leveraged their existing hostility towards Gryffindor to his advantage. Ethan did not mention Hufflepuff because they tend to follow the majority. Once a consensus is reached among the other houses, Hufflepuff is likely to concur. Under Ethan's guidance, a consensus F formed across the three houses, casting Gryffindor in a negative light for their treatment of their own. Central to this strategy was Ethan's mastery of charming humans. By maximizing the effects of control spells and mental powers, his words resonated powerfully, convincing others with ease. This shift in atmosphere led to a change in behavior among the Gryffindors. Those who had previously insulted Harry and others began to show remorse. Seamus, previously close to Harry, apologized for his actions during a critical moment. Several senior students also offered apologies, marking a significant improvement in the situation for Harry and his friends compared to the original narrative. Ethan was pleased with the outcome of his speech, which served as a practical test of his psychic abilities and control spells. As he aspires to revolutionize the magical world and establish a floating city, mastering such political maneuvers is crucial for gaining supporters. Additionally, this experience provided him with deeper insights into psychic abilities. As a result of his successful manipulation, Ethan's understanding of psychic powers deepened, leading to an increase in his psion level and the acquisition of new abilities: detect thoughts, memory control, heart pounding, and thought communication. Detect thoughts allows Ethan to listen to surface thoughts, akin to legilimency. Mind Blast is a powerful spell that can shock the minds of enemies within a specific area. Memory Control enables the addition, modification, and deletion of a target's memories, provided the target offers no resistance. After reading a series of new spells, Ethan suddenly felt that his abilities as a psychic, particularly in influencing people's emotions and thoughts, were becoming increasingly potent. This newfound prowess was not lost on his fellow Ravenclaw students, who began to view Ethan in a new light. His consistent excellence, positivity, and dedication to his studies had always made an impression, serving as an inspiration to many. However, in the traditionally free-spirited and nonconformist environment of Ravenclaw, openly admiring someone was uncommon. After all, idolizing and emulating someone seemed contrary to the house's ethos of individuality and freedom. Ravenclaw prized freedom, but this had led to a culture where being free for the sake of freedom was the norm, and those who did not outwardly display this form of freedom were often seen as outliers. This was reminiscent of a philosophical question posed by a mythical fishing deity: can freedom, if mandated by the god of liberty, truly be considered freedom? Ethan's recent discourse challenged this prevailing mindset, shifting the focus from a superficial interpretation of freedom to a deeper engagement with knowledge and intellectual curiosity. This shift was particularly evident among the younger students, especially the first years, who realized that many around them shared Ethan's values and approach. Admiring Ethan no longer felt like an alien concept. Consequently, more students began to emulate Ethan's approach to learning and his lifestyle, moving away from less productive hobbies like researching egg divination or throwing dice to decide daily activities. In this way, Ethan emerged as an influential figure within Ravenclaw, especially among the first-year students, effectively becoming the house's unofficial leader. In the broader context of the school, aside from Quidditch star Cyrilla Ray Allen and the female prefect Penelope Clivat, no one wielded more influence than Ethan. This included the male Ravenclaw prefect, whose name was less known among the students. Ethan's impact was a testament to his leadership and the shift in cultural values he inspired within Ravenclaw, emphasizing the pursuit of knowledge over the mere appearance of freedom. Chapter 62: A Night in the Forbidden Forest. Even with Ethan's help in smoothing things over, the school's punishment for Harry, Ron, Neville, and Malfoy remained unchanged. They all received the same note, stating their confinement would begin at 11 o'clock that night, and they were to meet Mr. Filch in the foyer. At the appointed time, Harry, Ron, and Neville descended to the entrance hall, where Argus Filch, the caretaker of Hogwarts, awaited them, along with Malfoy. Filch had a daunting task for them as punishment: patrolling the Forbidden Forest. The very name of the Forbidden Forest was enough to instill fear. It was a place even Dumbledore warned against, filled with creatures like eight-eyed spiders, centaurs with a disdain for wizards, werewolves under the full moon, and various other dark beings. The thought of venturing there at night doubled their fear. Nonetheless, unable to change their confinement, they reluctantly followed Filch to meet Hagrid. Unbeknownst to them, Ethan had been following invisibly. He had long wished to explore the Forbidden Forest, but lacked a guide. Seizing the opportunity presented by the others' confinement, Ethan was fully prepared, even donning Gryffindor colors to blend in if discovered. Upon reaching the forest's edge, they found Hagrid waiting. Filch, before departing, cryptically told Hagrid not to make it too easy for them. Hagrid, whose nature was fundamentally different from Filch's, dismissed the caretaker's advice. While Filch, a squib, harbored resentment towards the magically talented, Hagrid was known for his optimism and love for the students. Their differing perspectives often led to disagreements. As soon as Filch left, Draco Malfoy began to protest, attempting to use his father's influence to avoid the task. However, Hagrid, unimpressed by Malfoy's threats and having little patience for Slytherin antics, sharply rebuked him. He made it clear that Hogwarts demanded useful contributions, not just name-dropping. Ethan, observing from his invisible vantage point, found Hagrid's retort satisfying. It wasn't that he bore any ill will towards Slytherin. Rather, Malfoy's behavior was simply irksome. Malfoy often resorted to petty schemes to annoy others, taking pride in such actions. Ethan believed that such behavior needed to be addressed firmly. As they prepared to enter the Forbidden Forest, the tension was palpable. The night promised to be an unforgettable experience, filled with the unknown dangers of the dark woods and the personal dynamics of the group. Hagrid, satisfied with the silence, divided the group as if mimicking those cliché protagonists in horror films. He assigned Malfoy, Neville, and his dog Fang to one team, while he personally led Harry, Ron, and Ethan, who had joined them for the ride. The cold moonlight illuminated the path to the Forbidden Forest, which loomed ahead like a gaping maw, ready to swallow any who dared to enter. Hagrid guided them down a winding path that gradually vanished into the depths of the dark woods, a breeze tussling their hair. From the entrance, the dense forest appeared hazy and indistinct, its oddly shaped branches resembling the claws and teeth of waiting demons. The moonlight, filtering through the leaves, cast eerie, dizzying patterns on the forest floor, offering no warmth but a strange, misty ambiance. As they patrolled, Hagrid's pace was leisurely, allowing him to observe their surroundings. He took the opportunity to educate Harry and Ron about the various creatures and plants they encountered. Hagrid, ever the friend, ensured they were well looked after. Behind them, Ethan, the unofficial tourist, listened intently to Hagrid's expert guidance while collecting valuable materials along the way. Grass bugs, jumping toadstool caps, belladonna, white berries, moonstones, and soundless bird feathers. With his keen senses, Ethan missed no opportunity to gather nearby resources, even collecting unicorn blood he found along the path. Although drinking unicorn blood carries a deadly curse, using it in potions is a different matter entirely. After about an hour, Ethan bid farewell to the group, venturing off the safe path into more perilous parts of the forest in search of a nest of motla rats, known for the valuable magical substance in their sea anemone-like tumors. Alone, Ethan relied on his heightened perception to navigate the Forbidden Forest and locate the materials he needed. However, he soon noticed the moonstone in his bag acting strangely, its power fluctuating and causing him unease. Curious, Ethan followed the direction in which the moonstone's power surged the most. His exploration led him to a disturbing sight, large drops of silver-blue blood beside a moss-covered stump, indicating a severely injured unicorn. Could this be what the moonstone is pointing towards? Ethan pondered. Rounding a large tree, he heard the sound of hooves and came upon a clearing where a silver-white unicorn faced off against a masked wizard in a black cloak. "Damn it, how did you lead me here?" Ethan cursed silently. Despite his caution and confidence in his abilities, he knew better than to engage in a confrontation with Quirrell, who was possessed by Voldemort, especially during an attack on a unicorn. Ethan's initial plan had been to follow Hagrid into the Forbidden Forest along a safe route, taking the opportunity to collect herbs while the forest was unguarded. In his strategy, Voldemort was merely an incidental factor, not someone to confront directly. Ethan was wandering in the Forbidden Forest, having already ensured that the dangerous creatures nearby were on alert for his presence. He knew that causing trouble would attract the attention of the entire Forbidden Forest Protection Force. Whether it was Hagrid himself or the Centaurs, they would find him if he got into trouble. At that time, he planned to seize the opportunity to make a fortune. However, he hadn't anticipated that following this unlucky moonstone would lead him directly into aiding a unicorn in its fight against Voldemort. Ironically, he became the pawn in his own plan. Ethan was just about to turn around, planning to use an invisibility spell to keep his distance from the conflict. Unexpectedly, the scarred unicorn, seemingly oblivious to its opponent, charged towards Ethan as if it could see him despite his invisibility. This action seemed almost like a deliberate temptation. Bizarre! Ethan's confidence wavered. He was taken aback by the turn of events, it feeling as though he had become an unwitting participant in a battle he had sought to exploit. He silently thanked the boss of everlasting sorrow for the reward, despite the unforeseen circumstances. Chapter 63, The Unicorn's Pursuit. The unicorn couldn't actually see Ethan. It was the power of the moonstone that attracted her. Ethan used his ability to communicate with animals, allowing him to engage in spiritual conversations and strategize accordingly. When the unicorn attacked, Ethan launched a sneak attack. Observing from a distance, Ethan felt as though the universe was conspiring to drag him into trouble when the unicorn charged towards him upon noticing his presence. The unicorn aimed to draw him into the water, a fate Ethan was keen to avoid, so he turned and fled. Quirrell, the masked man who had attacked the unicorn and preferred to remain unnamed, was not willing to let his prey escape so easily and quickly gave chase. Thus, a chase ensued within the vast room, originating from the forbidden forest. The more Ethan ran, the more his fear grew. He had never encountered a unicorn capable of seeing through invisibility, yet it seemed to track his every move with unerring accuracy. Puzzled by this phenomenon, Ethan couldn't deduce how it was happening. Eventually, by a creak, Ethan ceased running. He turned to face his pursuer, raised his wand, and set several traps nearby with the Ardent Sign spell, curious to see how the situation would unfold. Within moments, the sound of hooves approached, and the unicorn located him once again. However, as it drew near, Ethan noticed the creature's eyes were unfocused, not directly looking at him. It seemed to be searching for something else. Could it be that it can't actually see me? Is there something on me that it's drawn to? Ethan speculated. Upon opening his wallet, the unicorn's expression shifted to one of surprise, and it approached him more eagerly. It became clear that the moonstone was the source of attraction, its power and significance far greater than Ethan had initially realized. It appears this unicorn needs saving, Ethan thought, preparing to cast a fireball spell. At that moment, Quirrell caught up, eyeing the unicorn with malice. "Run! Why don't you run, you little brat?" he taunted, his laughter echoing ominously through the area, suggesting it would serve as Ethan's grave. Quirrell's impatience had grown over the long chase. As Quirrell advanced, the unicorn ceased its approach towards the moonstone, seemingly to protect it. The unicorn then charged at Quirrell, its horn aimed and ready. The battle resumed with renewed vigor. Despite their gentle nature, unicorns are formidable opponents with significant magic resistance. In moments of anger, they can even challenge a fire dragon in terms of strength and bravery. However, Ethan could see that the unicorn was at a disadvantage. Quirrell's relentless pursuit had left it scarred and less agile, yet it resisted bravely. The unicorn's attacks, though spirited, seemed like a desperate struggle, with Quirrell inflicting wound after wound. Ethan observed that Quirrell, too, had weakened, his magical power waning. This was the consequence of drinking unicorn blood, a desperate act to sustain his fractured soul. Voldemort had forced Quirrell to bear the brunt of a curse, leaving him in a miserable state. The only respite from Voldemort draining Quirrell's vitality would be unicorn blood, making it essential for their survival. Ethan, determined to intervene, held his breath and focused. He discreetly moved away from Quirrell, cast a stun curse on the unicorn, and then stepped forward, launching a mind blast. The spell hit Professor Quirrell like a hammer to the brain, blanking his mind and suppressing the red light at his wand's tip. Despite being possessed by the Dark Lord, with the ability to see and hear in all directions, Quirrell was caught off guard by the invisible blow, followed by a pre-prepared fireball. The fireball, a sphere of orange-red flames, hit him squarely in the chest, causing a massive explosion. Amid the explosion, Ethan thought he heard a sharp voice that didn't belong to Professor Quirrell. When the light from the fireball dissipated, he saw Quirrell still standing, though his black robe was now tattered. The fireball hadn't inflicted the expected damage, but Ethan didn't cease his assault. Revealing himself from his invisible state, he pointed at Quirrell and cast Seal of Alder, Impact. The shock wave sent Quirrell flying into a tree, where he landed right into an ardent trap Ethan had set earlier. Paralyzed and unable to move or fight back, Quirrell realized he had been ambushed, presumably by a Gryffindor student. Quirrell, already weakened from his encounter with the unicorn, recognized the gravity of his situation. The fireball spell alone could have been fatal if not for Voldemort's power. Now trapped and defenseless, he knew he had to flee. As Ethan prepared another spell, Quirrell transformed into a black mist and escaped. Seconds later, Hagrid, Harry, and Ron encountered the fleeing Quirrell. Ron, mistaking him for a ghost, screamed in fright. Quirrell, noticing Harry, attempted to approach him, but Hagrid bravely intervened. Harry, however, was immobilized by a sudden, sharp pain in his scar, an experience unlike any before, as if his scar had burst into flames. Ethan, following closely, launched a micrometeor spell. Quirrell, in his black mist form and believing himself immune to physical attacks, underestimated the threat. The magical sphere pierced through his mist form, causing intense pain and significantly reducing the mist's volume. This demonstrated the potency of the three-ring god-slaying spell, which inflicted real damage regardless of the opponent's form. Realizing the danger posed by this formidable Gryffindor, Quirrell dared not linger and fled as far as possible. Chapter 64. After ensuring that Hagrid and the others were safe, Ethan turned his attention back to the unicorn. Upon his return, he found the majestic creature in dire straits, too weak to pursue Scholar Moonstone any longer, merely lying on the ground, groaning in agony. However, the unicorn's demeanor brightened upon Ethan's approach. Could Scholar Moonstone be this appealing? Ethan mused, noting the creature's severe condition as if its life force had been drained. Pointing his wand at the unicorn's wound, Ethan uttered, "Healing as before." This basic healing spell was among the many he had mastered over the semester, including all spells up to level 3 accessible to him, with the healing curse being no exception. Yet, after casting, the spell only managed to slightly stem the bleeding without healing the wound. Ethan had tested this spell on himself before, with immediate results each time. Puzzled by its ineffectiveness on the unicorn, he stubbornly attempted the spell multiple times, achieving minimal temporary recovery before the wound reopened. It wasn't until he employed detection magic that Ethan discovered a potent curse afflicting the wound, explaining the difficulty in healing. Black magic, such as Snape's creation of the Shadowless Blade, could indeed render wounds resistant to magical healing. Faced with this challenge, Ethan tried administering an uplifting potion from an Auror's kit to the unicorn, but to little avail. Then, Ethan noticed a previously wounded area on the unicorn's nose had healed. Intrigued, he observed the unicorn lying peacefully beside him, its head resting near the wallet at his waist containing the moonstone. Could the moonstone be responsible for this healing? Eager to test his theory, Ethan positioned the moonstone near the unicorn's most severe wound on its thigh. As the moonstone neared, the curse's grip on the wound weakened, eventually dissipating entirely, allowing the wound to begin healing. With the curse lifted, Ethan's healing spell now significantly stemmed the bleeding. This stone possesses the power to dispel curses, Ethan realized. Utilizing the moonstone's power, he managed to dispel the curse and heal all the unicorn's wounds, stabilizing its condition. With some rest, the unicorn would fully recover. As Ethan witnessed the moonstone's effect, he gained new insights. You watched as Scholar Moonstone exorcised the curse of dark magic, and you understood the spell, curse. Displacement Curse, a third-level abjuration spell that instantly removes all curses from an item or creature. You understand the healing power of Moonstone. You understand the technique of using the power of nature to restore life. You understand the mage's rejuvenation technique. Rejuvenation, harnessing the power of nature for healing. Rejuvenation? Isn't that a druid spell? Ethan exclaimed, surprised. His magical education had been confined to wizarding spells, which relied on magical power. The discovery of a druidic spell, which draws from the power of nature rather than a magical system, was unexpected. The power within this scholar's moonstone is deeply connected to nature, Ethan concluded, understanding its attraction to the forbidden forest and the injured unicorn, as well as the unicorn's fascination with the stone. He recalled the lore surrounding unicorns in the wizarding world. Majestic beings native to the forests of northern Europe, with adults boasting silver-white coats and juveniles golden. The horn, blood, and hair of unicorns are imbued with potent magical properties, highlighting the deep connection between these creatures and the natural world. The unicorn's tail hair has the effect of detoxifying, can be used to make a wand, and its blood can extend life. Its docile appearance and personality starkly contrast its ability to combat fire dragons. Unicorns generally avoid human contact, showing a preference for witches over wizards, and their swift nature makes them difficult to capture. However, in other magical realms, unicorns transcend their status as mere magical creatures, embodying kindness, purity, and serving as guardians of nature. They are revered as the lords of the forest, serving the gods of nature and forest in worlds where deities exist. Unicorns are deeply intertwined with natural forces. Wizards in the Harry Potter universe have discovered that the magic wielded by magical creatures differs from that used by wizards. The specifics of these differences, and whether magical creatures possess unique magical powers or if there exists a separate power system among them, remain unexplored. However, Ethan can now assert that, in this world, magic is not the only power system. There is also the force of nature. This force pervades nature and is inherent in magical creatures connected to it. Publishing these findings could revolutionize the wizarding world, but that is a consideration for Ethan's future. At the moment, his focus is on the unicorn before him, whose cuteness is irresistible. The unicorn appears young, with a slightly juvenile head and body, and its mane is tinged with gold. Despite looking somewhat disheveled from a recent battle, its silver hair is smooth and lustrous. Its horse-like grace and large, expressive eyes make even Ethan, who is not usually inclined to keep pets, want to pet it. When Ethan tentatively reaches out, the unicorn eagerly approaches, contradicting the belief that unicorns repel wizards. Delighted, Ethan embraces the unicorn's head, appreciating the creature's willingness to bond. Mid-embrace, Ethan is startled by a childish female voice emanating from the unicorn, reminding him of his ability to communicate with animals. "That, you can talk?" Ethan asks, releasing the unicorn's head in surprise. Of course, what unicorn can't talk? The unicorn responds, rolling its eyes and giving Ethan a curious look. "Mr. Druid, how can you speak the language of unicorns?" Ethan explains that his ability to communicate with magical creatures is a magical function, effective as long as the creature is capable of communication. This revelation impresses the unicorn, which expresses gratitude to Ethan for saving it, calling him Lord Druid. Ethan's interaction with the unicorn highlights his unique magical abilities and sets the stage for a deeper exploration of the magical world's complexities. The unicorn's ability to speak and its acknowledgement of Ethan's role as a protector underscore the special bond between magical creatures and those who understand the true nature of magic. Early in the morning, Ethan had set the trap and then led the antagonist here, defeating him in one fell swoop. "Lord Druid is so amazing," a voice exclaimed. Ethan was taken aback by such a direct response. What a frank child, he thought. However, he felt a twinge of guilt because the druid the child admired had not been luring the enemy but was actually fleeing. The trap had been hastily arranged, and in the end, he and the Dark Lord had no choice but to engage in battle. Ethan hadn't taken the initiative to help out of valor but necessity. Yet, facing the child's watery, shining eyes filled with innocence, Ethan couldn't bring himself to shatter her expectations, so he nodded and said, "It's okay, little one. This is what I'm supposed to do." Then he asked curiously, "But why do you call me a druid, little guy? I'm clearly a wizard. Do you know what a druid is?" "A druid is a druid," the unicorn replied, looking at Ethan with a puzzled expression. "My parents told me that the person who represents nature is the druid. The moonstone chose you, and you are the spokesperson of nature, so you are the druid." It seemed they hadn't seen a true druid either. No wonder, after all, this is the world of wizards. Druidism and similar practices had been extinct for thousands of years. However, judging from the scholar moonstone left by the ancient Celts, there might have been real druids at that time, and the moonstone could be a druid's artifact. After the Saxons landed in England, they dominated the Celts and eradicated the druid religion. Ethan wondered if the wizards had consciously exterminated the druids. After all, both groups were spellcasters, likely leading to intense rivalry. Ethan felt he might have stumbled upon a piece of historical truth. However, this historical issue was irrelevant to him now. What mattered was the moonstone and the potential druidic power it represented. Since the moonstone held the power of nature and was considered a sacred object of the druids, could it be possible for him to master the power of the druids? Updated 5.4, additional update 11.18. Chapter 65. Ethan pondered the situation. Given that the unicorn had mentioned her parents and their knowledge of the druids, it was likely her parents were well informed. So, with a smile, Ethan addressed the unicorn. "Little one, now that your injury has healed, let me escort you home. I have some questions that I'd like to ask your parents for advice." "Okay," the little unicorn responded cheerfully, standing up to lead the way. "Please, Master Druid, come with me to my home, but you won't be able to meet my parents because they were killed by the bad guys." "Were they actually killed by Voldemort?" Observing the sadness in the little unicorn's eyes, Ethan felt a surge of anger. Voldemort truly was a despicable creature, capable of killing such a beautiful being. Gently touching the unicorn's head, Ethan offered his condolences. "I'm sorry, little one." "It's okay, Lord Druid," the unicorn replied, shaking its head as its eyes regained some brightness. "My parents left me with a group of younger siblings. I will take good care of them." Ethan was touched by the unicorn's resolve. "Then, let me meet your brothers and sisters. And by the way, don't refer to me as a druid. It sounds odd. You can call me Ethan, and I'll call you by your name. That way, we're friends." "All right, Lord Ethan and I are friends," the unicorn snorted happily, then added, "But I don't have a name." "Why is that?" Ethan asked, puzzled. "Because I'm not an adult. Only adult unicorns are named by their parents," the unicorn explained, then had a realization. "Since I have to take care of my siblings, I should be considered an adult. Now that I'm an adult, I should have a name. Could you give me one, Master Ethan?" Ethan was intrigued by the request. After a moment of thought, he found the perfect name. "Then I'll call you Luru." Luru is the name of a unicorn deity from another world, revered as the queen of unicorns and all sentient beasts, as well as an ally and mount of the forest god. Ethan felt a special connection with the little unicorn before him and chose this name, hoping she would grow strong and serve as a bridge between him and the creatures of the Forbidden Forest. Unicorns hold a significant status in the forest, and being recognized by one could lead to acceptance by the entire forest community. With Ethan possessing the Scholar Moonstone and being referred to as Lord Druid by the unicorn, his role as a guest deity in the forest seemed fitting. "Okay, I'll be called Luru from now on." "Thank you, Lord Ethan." The unicorn joyfully accepted the name, prancing around Ethan. Then she approached him, nuzzling his chest. "Lord Ethan, my home is a bit far. Would you like to ride on my back, and I'll take you there?" Ethan was moved by the offer. Riding a unicorn was a privilege said to be reserved for the purest and most beautiful in legends. However, he initially hesitated. "No, Luru, we're friends. It would be impolite to ride on a friend." "Is that so?" Lurui tilted her head, puzzled. "But that's a rule for wizards. We unicorns don't mind." Ethan realized that for different species, morals and rules varied. What might be considered disrespectful among humans was natural for unicorns. Moreover, Lurui, being named after a unicorn deity who served as a mount, made Ethan reconsider his stance. Understanding the difference in perspectives, Ethan no longer resisted the idea. He gently placed his hands on Lurui's shoulders, preparing to accept her generous offer. He smoothly jumped up and sat on her back. "Master Ethan, grab my mane and sit tight." "Let's go," Larry said, before she opened her hooves and walked towards the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Riding on the back of the unicorn, Ethan hugged her neck, feeling the wind caress his cheeks, evoking an indescribable sensation akin to galloping on a horse. Perhaps this was the essence of adventure for men. Although Ethan had experienced the thrill of speed on the Quidditch field, the unique feeling of riding Larry through the Forbidden Forest still made his heart race. Together, they crossed a narrow stream and navigated through the dense shrubs of the forest, eventually arriving at a shallow lake. The lake was encircled by tall fir trees, and its shores were blanketed with lush grass, illuminated by fireflies dancing near the water. The water at the shore was shallow, barely reaching Larry's knees. In the lake, there was a small island adorned with greenery and trees that intertwined to form a dreamy arch. This was Larry's home. Ethan dismounted and followed her through the water towards the island. Midway, he noticed a pony's head emerge from behind the arch, distinguished by an additional horn. Then, a second and a third appeared, revealing a total of 5 little unicorns hidden behind the arch. The sight of a stranger seemed to make the little unicorns shy, as they quickly retracted their heads and hid. "Sorry, Lord Ethan, these little ones might be a bit shy," Larry said apologetically. "Can you stay here for a moment? I'll go and talk to them." "Of course, Larry. Take your time," Ethan replied, allowing Larry to approach the island and reunite with the unicorns. The young ones, still in their golden coats, were visibly excited to see their sister return. They emerged from behind the arch, lively and playful. From a distance, Ethan watched as Larry interacted with them, whispering words he couldn't understand. Soon after, the little unicorns, one by one, returned to their nest before eagerly approaching Ethan. Larry followed, and Ethan noticed they were carrying bunches of red and blue berries in their mouths. Their big, moist eyes sparkled as they danced around Ethan, shaking their heads, attempting to place the berries on the ground before him. "No," Larry interjected. "Wizards are different from us. They don't appreciate things being placed on the ground." Ethan extended his hand. And the little unicorns deposited the berries into his palm one by one. Larry looked at the berries with a hint of pride and said, "These are gifts from the little ones, freshly picked and very moist." Ethan tasted the berries, commenting, "Sweet and delicious, plump and juicy. Indeed, these are exceptional fruits. Thank you, little ones." Though his praise was slightly exaggerated, the berries were wild and a bit sour compared to cultivated varieties. The gesture from the little unicorns was what truly mattered. Ethan then spent time playing with the little unicorns in their lair. The young creatures took a liking to this nature-loving wizard, allowing Ethan to interact with them freely. Surrounded by the fluffy foals, Ethan began to appreciate the joy that comes with caring for pets. Before leaving, Larry showed him a corner of the nest where a dry tree stump had formed a hole. Inside, Ethan discovered treasures that would astonish any potion master or alchemist. 7 or 8 severed unicorn horns, averaging 20 centimeters in length, a large bundle of unicorn tail hair, and the stump itself, filled with gold and silver unicorn fur. "I heard from my parents that humans cherish these things," Larry mentioned, revealing a world of magical resources Ethan had never imagined. "Very much so. We make it a point to collect these fallen horns and hairs, and occasionally we leave a note for the rangers here to express our gratitude," Larry said earnestly. "Since Master Ethan is a wizard, these items should be of use to him, right? Master Ethan has saved my life and is a friend. Therefore, if you need anything here, Master Ethan, feel free to take it," Larry continued. Really? Really? Ethan was genuinely moved as he looked at the tree stump brimming with materials in front of him. If sold, these items could fetch tens of thousands of galleons. The complete unicorn horns alone were incredibly valuable. It seemed these unicorns were not aware of the worldly value of these items. However, Ethan was not overly greedy. He only took a single unicorn horn, a small bundle of tail hairs, and a large handful of fluff. Under Larry's puzzled gaze, Ethan smiled and said, "You mentioned that we are Ryans, so what difference does it make whether these items are with you or with me? If I need anything, I can simply come to you. You wouldn't refuse me a visit, right?" "Of course," Larry replied joyfully. "Sir Ethan is welcome anytime." In addition to Larry, the young unicorns also had parting gifts for Ethan, which included berries and mushrooms. One little one even nibbled on a handful of the most tender and juicy grass and offered it to Ethan, leaving him speechless. Eventually, when Ethan left the unicorn lair, he appeared somewhat disheveled. His clothes were wrinkled and stained with grass and dirt, making him resemble Pomona Sprout, the herbology professor. Larry escorted him in this state. As they reached the creek where Ethan had previously confronted Voldemort, Ethan tugged at her mane, signaling her to halt. "Be careful, someone is approaching." The unicorn stopped, and soon after, the sound of other horses' hooves could be heard in the distance. These hoofbeats were much heavier compared to Larry's. The newcomer was significantly taller than Larry, with 4 hooves. Below the waist, he had a pale golden horse body, and his upper body was that of a handsome male figure with striking blue eyes and sparkling platinum hair. He was very handsome, a centaur. This scene was reminiscent of the unicorn lair, as depicted in Hogwarts Legacy, with updates noted on 6.4 and 12 Tine. Chapter 66, This Unicorn. The centaur looked surprised upon seeing Ethan beneath him. Is it okay now? I'm fine, Mr. Centaur. It was Master Ethan who saved me, Larry replied. However, to the centaur, it sounded merely like a cry. Nonetheless, he seemed to understand the sentiment and turned his gaze to Ethan. So you saved the unicorn, right, little pony? Foal? Me? Ethan was slightly taken aback by the centaur's words, but nodded in affirmation. Yes, Mr. Centaur. During a visit to the Forbidden Forest, I encountered a man in a black robe attacking Larry, so... He briefly explained the situation. Although Hagrid is known as the Gamekeeper, the Forbidden Forest's true guardians include the Centaur tribe, a fact overlooked by all previous Hogwarts headmasters. Is Larry the name you've given her? The centaur observed the unicorn, and then Ethan, nodding seriously. It seems Larry has taken a liking to you, which is rare. She wouldn't normally allow a male wizard to ride her. Ethan smiled, grateful for the bond. Yes, I deeply value this friendship. The centaur, impressed by Ethan's demeanor, responded, Indeed, you are a unique individual. It seems I've found the right person. He introduced himself as Firenze, a centaur guided by the stars, revealing that the stars had led him here due to a matter of destiny. Ethan recognized him as Firenze, a centaur known for his friendly disposition towards wizards and his temporary role as the divination professor, a position that led to his ostracization from his tribe until the series' end. Destiny? You mean Harry Potter? Ethan asked, puzzled. No, Firenze corrected. That young one has his own path, but the destiny tied to the centaurs is before me. You mean me? Ethan was taken aback, wondering how his fate was intertwined with the centaurs. At that moment, the sound of hooves approached. 2 more centaurs emerged, questioning Firenze's presence and his duty to protect the remaining unicorns from a dangerous wizard. Disaster has been averted and hope preserved, Firenze explained, indicating that the stars had directed him to Ethan, the man of destiny. Upon seeing Ethan and Larry, one of the centaurs lowered his voice, still skeptical. So this is the destined one? Take a closer look, Bane, Firenze urged gently. Larry's rescue has altered destiny. We centaurs will receive clearer guidance and draw nearer to our fate. Larry is named by the man of destiny. Ethan greeted the new arrivals. Hello, gentlemen centaurs. I am Ethan Green from Ravenclaw. Hello, Mr. Green. Another centaur, Ronan, introduced himself. To earn Larry's affection, you must be a kind and trustworthy wizard. Ethan felt that having a unicorn's endorsement indeed made a difference, as long as he could maintain this unique bond. In front of the forest, a unicorn racing through the trees would convince 9 out of 10 people of its rider's benevolence. Ethan's decision to save Larry proved to be the right choice. Ronan paused and sighed. But to be honest, you don't look much older than My Little Pony. Ronan, how can you so readily believe Firenze's story? Bane angrily stomped his hooves, expressing his dissent. We are centaurs, and we must never defy the will of the stars, even if the fate of the unicorn changes. Bane, Firenze is correct. You need to observe the sky again. Mars is indeed very bright tonight, but Jupiter's brightness has begun to surpass that of Mars, Ronan insisted. Yes, Bane, anger will only distract you from your destiny. I firmly believe that we have seen the hope for our people. The fate of the centaurs and the Forbidden Forest will change. Firenze added loudly. After speaking, he turned to Ethan. Please forgive my presumption, Ethan. I am convinced that you are the one destined to change the fate of the centaurs, so I would like to invite you to visit the centaur tribe as a guest. Firenze said, bending his 2 front legs in a salute to Ethan. This gesture surprised Ronan, who, despite his belief in Firenze, did not expect such a display of respect. Bane looked even more furious. Bow down to humans, Firenze. You are a disgrace to the centaurs. I'm going to tell the clan leader about this. Just you wait. It was clear that the centaur tribe was divided, with Bane representing a faction of radical horse nationalism. The radical left in anger, leaving Firenze and Ronan behind. Then Ronan addressed Ethan. Little Pony, you've heard Firenze's invitation. This is also my sentiment. What do you think? Ethan turned to Larry. What about you? Will you accompany me? Don't touch that. It's itchy. Larry snorted in mild annoyance, then confidently said, Of course I will go. Wherever you wish to go, I will follow. I'll be with you until we reach the edge of the forbidden forest. The two centaurs observed with interest as Ethan communicated with Larry in the language of unicorns. After receiving Larry's affirmative response, Ethan felt reassured. Now, Larry was almost like his honor guard, a talisman ensuring his safety. With Larry by his side, Ethan felt confident that the centaurs would mean him no harm. Of course, I would be delighted to visit the centaur tribe, Ethan said to the two centaurs, as long as you don't reveal my whereabouts to Headmaster Dumbledore. Don't worry, little pony, we won't, Firenze replied cheerfully. Our agreement with Hogwarts is limited to guarding the forbidden forest. Your laws do not bind centaurs. So please follow me. Ethan then rode Larry, following the two centaurs, towards the centaur tribe. Chapter 67, An Unexpected Alliance. Led by two centaurs, Ethan made his way through a grassy hillside and arrived at a wide valley. Ronan and Firenze, his guides, halted at the valley's entrance. Suddenly, Firenze let out a series of whistles, causing the surrounding bushes to rustle as several centaurs of various appearances emerged. Among them was Bane. Ethan was taken aback by their sudden appearance, likening it to an ambush, though here there were no horsemen wielding swords or axes. Instead, the centaurs gathered in pairs, bending their front legs and lowering their heads in a gesture of respect, as if saluting someone of higher status. A particularly majestic centaur with golden red hair and a beard stepped forward. His lower body, a shiny brown-red horse's form, ended in a long, flowing red tail. Ethan noted the centaur's handsome appearance, musing about Firenze's future popularity among young witches. However, he saw no female centaurs and wondered about their status within the group. Upon seeing the golden red-haired centaur, Firenze and Ronan performed a centaur salute, touching their chests with their left hands after bowing their heads. The centaur, identified as Marjorie, the leader of the centaurs, acknowledged Firenze with a nod. Firenze approached Marjorie and whispered something to him. Marjorie then addressed Ethan. "Welcome, Mr. Green. I am Marjorie, the leader of the centaurs. The stars have foretold our destined meeting." His voice was deep and resonant, filled with a compelling cadence. "Firenze has shared your deeds concerning the unicorn. It is an honor to meet you." Despite Marjorie's friendly words, Ethan couldn't help but feel uneasy. Centaurs typically avoided involvement in wizarding affairs, preferring a solitary existence. They were known for their skills in magic healing, divination, archery, and astronomy, as well as their formidable combat abilities. However, their pride led them to distance themselves from wizards, whom they viewed as arrogant for categorizing magical beings. Opting to be classified as beasts, rather than share the human designation with beings like hags and vampires, centaurs rarely interacted with the Ministry of Magic's Department for the Management and Control of Magical Creatures. The existence of a centaur liaison office, which no centaur used, was a testament to their disdain. Ethan, aware of the centaurs' pride and their usual reluctance to seek help from humans, approached the situation with caution. He dismounted and respectfully addressed Marjorie. "Dear Centaur Leader, may I inquire if there's any assistance I can provide?" Bane, standing behind Marjorie, expressed his displeasure with a snort and a stomp of his hooves. However, Marjorie's calming gesture silenced him, showcasing his authority. Marjorie responded candidly, "We do indeed require your help. Following your rescue of the unicorn, Lara, was it, we noticed a shift in the stars. According to their guidance, we believe you possess the power to alter the fate of our centaur community, though it may seem abrupt. We do need your help," the centaur insisted, reiterating the notion that Ethan had the power to change the fate of their kind. After hearing such claims multiple times, Ethan himself almost started to believe in this seemingly absurd idea. Can I really change the fate of the centaurs? How is that possible when I'm unaware of such power within me? Are they concealing something? Ethan pondered, his gaze dropping to the small bag he carried. Since his arrival near the centaur tribe, he couldn't deny the surge in the power he felt emanating from within it. Perhaps the centaur's divination holds some truth, but with all due respect, I'm unaware of any power I possess that could aid your kind, Ethan confessed, feigning confusion. His hesitation wasn't new. He had deliberated long before deciding to assist Larry, let alone the centaurs. Faced with the unknown, his caution was understandable. "I'm sorry, Mr. Green. Although we centaurs utilize the stars to dispel some future uncertainty, the details often elude us," Marjorie admitted with a rueful smile. "However, I can assure you that the prophecy mentions that once the destined man arrives at our tribe, everything will align. So, why not visit our tribe? We'd be delighted to host you, offer some late-night snacks, and you're free to leave whenever you wish. What do you think?" The idea of staying with the centaurs for a while, enjoying some midnight snacks before departing, didn't seem too daunting to Ethan. Glancing at Larry, who was playfully tugging at the hem of his clothes as if to say he wanted to join, Ethan considered the offer. Marjorie, noticing Larry's actions, boldly added, "Of course, our unicorn friends are welcome too." After a moment's thought, Ethan nodded in agreement. "Then please, lead the way," he responded, prompting Marjorie to signal the other centaurs to start preparations. Having been active all night, especially after an encounter with Voldemort and wandering the Forbidden Forest, Ethan felt the pangs of hunger and thirst. Riding on Larry's back for the majority of the journey from the horned beast's nest to the centaur tribe did little to alleviate his fatigue. Berries alone were insufficient, so he looked forward to whatever the centaurs had to offer, hopeful it would be a pleasant change from the usual fare. As they moved, the centaurs led Ethan along a tributary of the Black Lake, through a deep valley hidden behind thorn bushes. When the hinterland of the valley came into view, Ethan was taken aback by the sight. The land was open and flat, with the centaur tribe settled within. Enclosed by wooden fences and walls were numerous conical tents, primarily constructed from wood and animal skins, with a few stone houses interspersed among them. These dwellings were adorned with colorful patterns, feathers, flowers, and vines, exuding a primitive yet beautiful charm. Ethan observed several young centaurs frolicking, while the adults watched him with a mix of curiosity and vigilance, only relaxing when Marjorie intervened. The foals, less cautious than their elders, continued their playful antics, some even approaching Larry with curiosity before retreating in surprise upon noticing Ethan. Throughout this, Ethan's gaze never wavered from the centaurs and their way of life. Wizards and centaurs, both proud races, often held superficial understandings of each other due to their mutual arrogance. Few wizards took the time to study centaurs deeply, much like their lack of understanding towards werewolves. Thus, everything Ethan witnessed felt shrouded in mystery, offering him a rare glimpse into the lives of these enigmatic beings. To Ethan, making people want to find out. Therefore, the lives of these centaurs are shrouded in mystery. On the first level, their way of life is very attractive to wizards like Ethan. Chapter 68, Ethan's Banquet. Ethan's banquet was not set to start immediately. Before the festivities began, Firenze guided Ethan through the centaur tribe, allowing him to observe their way of life. The centaurs were engaged in various activities, but upon noticing Ethan, they paused their tasks, whether it was weaving fabrics, drying herbs, or preparing to leave, to observe the boy. Ethan, who had only encountered male centaurs in both his past and present lives, was intrigued to meet female centaurs for the first time within the tribe. Ethan noted that the living conditions among the centaurs reflected a division of labor similar to that of primitive human tribes. Men were tasked with hunting, defending their territory, and patrolling, while women handled gathering, handicrafts, and food processing. This division explained why female centaurs were seldom seen outside their community, as the Forbidden Forest's tasks were managed by male centaurs. Female centaurs, with their human-like upper bodies, appeared more slender and delicate compared to their male counterparts, yet they possessed a muscular beauty. Their long hair, matching the color of their body hair, was often styled into intricate braids adorned with hairpins and bells, showcasing a distinct aesthetic from human women. Contrary to the wizarding world's belief that centaurs shunned clothing, Ethan discovered that female centaurs wore garments to cover their upper bodies, reflecting a sense of modesty akin to humans. This attire highlighted the centaurs' intelligent nature and their inevitable interactions with humans, leading to cultural exchanges despite their pride and isolation. The adoption of wizard-style accessories by female centaurs and the occasional use of armor by males, despite traditional taboos, underscored this point. Ferenzi explained that while some conservative tribes viewed armor as cowardly, it proved beneficial in reducing casualties, especially in battles against formidable foes like the eight-eyed spiders. Ronan mentioned that many young centaurs had formed secret friendships with Hogwarts students, drawn to the allure of wizard accessories. Bane, however, expressed disapproval of such exchanges within the Forbidden Forest, citing the noise of metal as a potential giveaway of their presence. Continuing their tour, Ethan and his guides reached the tribe's center, marked by a spacious clearing and the largest tent, adorned with intricate designs and guarded by patrolling centaurs. Ethan surmised that this tent served as either the leader's dwelling or a significant communal space. Nearby stood a massive stone array, with stones at least 1 meter high, arranged in seemingly random patterns that, upon closer inspection, formed 4 to 5 concentric circles, with the tallest stone at the center. Ethan, standing at the center, was vigilantly guarding it. Each stone around him was adorned with unique carvings, with those on the central stone being particularly intricate. "May I take a closer look?" Ethan inquired, pointing towards the stone circle. "This is the totem of our centaur tribe, our sacred place of worship, and our observatory for stargazing," Ferenzi explained to Ethan. "However, as you are a person of destiny and a distinguished guest of our tribe, you are free to explore as you wish." "Thank you very much," Ethan expressed his gratitude. "I promise not to disturb anything." Afterward, he gently patted Larry, the unicorn, signaling him to wait outside before venturing into the stone formation alone. His visit wasn't driven by mere curiosity. Surrounding him were stones adorned with various patterns, which he barely glanced at as he made his way directly towards the center of the formation. Ethan had sensed a violent reaction from the scholar Yue Shi's moonstone as soon as he neared the formation. Upon his arrival at the centaur tribe, the moonstone began reacting more intensely, its energy flickering, turning into high-frequency pulses as Ethan approached the center. He strongly suspected that the stone formations at the sea, Centaur tribe, and those in the Moonstone Garden both had origins tracing back to the Celtic ancestors, possibly remnants of Druidism from the time of British rule. The British Isles are home to many such stone formations, with Stonehenge, or the Salisbury Stone Circle, being the most renowned. These are believed to be creations from the era of Celtic ancestors. Ethan speculated that Stonehenge might actually have been a ceremonial site for Druidism, and that the centaur's very existence could be a result of Druidic practices or the power of nature. Ethan's theory was not without basis. He recalled a copy of Duffin's Vitruvian Man in the Hogwarts library, which detailed the anatomy of a centaur. According to the document, centaurs possess an unusual biological structure, with both a human chest cavity and a horse's abdominal cavity, separated by a thick supporting diaphragm. Their anatomy includes longer lungs, a more extensive digestive system, 12 pairs of human ribs, 18 pairs of horse ribs, and 2 large hearts. Such a complex biological structure could not have resulted from natural evolution, but must have been shaped by external influences. Given the absence of gods in the Harry Potter universe and considering the centaur's habits, Ethan concluded that this must be the work of natural forces. This theory is supported by other worlds, such as Jaina's homeland and the World of Warcraft universe, where centaurs are depicted as offspring of the forest demigod Cenarius and an earth element princess, embodying the fusion of nature's power and earth elements. Their half-human, half-horse appearance, derived from their father's half-human, half-deer form, symbolizes a blend of intelligence and natural wildness, characteristic of natural divinity. Ethan pondered whether the centaurs in his world were creations of Druidic practices. The centaur culture, deeply intertwined with Druidism, focuses on herbal medicine, astrology, and hunting. Although Ethan was not well versed in the Druidism of his world, he understood that Druidic power typically revolves around the earth, symbolizing plants and vitality, and the moon, representing the stars, moon, and wilderness. These aspects closely align with the centaur's expertise, making it hard to dismiss the connection between the two. However, these were merely Ethan's speculations. Yet, today, he seemed to be on the verge of uncovering some truth. Ethan stood in front of the central boulder, immediately noticing an obvious semicircular pit at its center. The pit's size matched perfectly with the scholar's moonstone he held in his hand. Ethan found it hard to believe in such coincidences. As he pondered the pit before him and thought about the moonstone in his bag, he instinctively took it out and placed it into the indentation. In the next moment, the situation changed dramatically. Chapter 69. The Awakening of the Scholar's Moonstone. The moment Ethan inserted the scholar's moonstone into the indentation, a silver-blue light blossomed. Centered on the moonstone, the ancient lines on the boulder, silent for millennia, awakened one by one. They shone with a silver-blue light, quickly spreading across the entire boulder. Then, the inner ring of stones surrounding the boulder, followed by the outer ring, began to glow. In less than 5 seconds, the entire stone formation was illuminated, emitting a buzzing sound. This significant reaction caught the attention of the entire centaur tribe. "What has that little wizard done to our sacred objects?" Ben shouted angrily, rushing towards the stone formation in an attempt to apprehend Ethan. However, he was stopped by an invisible barrier. Ronan, the melancholy centaur, paced back and forth, uneasy. He hoped this was a sign of fate, yet feared the potential consequences of such a disturbance. Most of the centaurs shared these feelings of curiosity, worry, and fear. Only Firenze and Lara remained calm. The little creature stared intently at the stone formation, observing Ethan standing within it, his eyes shining. As expected of a druid, he has managed to harness such a powerful force of nature. He truly is the chosen one of nature, the little creature exclaimed joyfully. Firenze whispered to comfort his companions. "Don't worry, everyone. This is not an accident. This is what the stars have foretold, the moment when the centaur's destiny changes. The man of destiny is revealing our future." "Firenze is right," a rich voice announced, calming the centaur's unease. It was Margaret, the centaur leader. From a distance, he observed Ethan within the stone formation, his voice ethereal. "The stars reveal our future trajectory, and we have chosen to embrace it actively. At this moment, the oath of our people is also our choice. We invited the child of destiny into our tribe, so we should welcome the changes he brings." His words quieted the worried centaurs, and even the most troublesome Bane ceased his complaints. Within the stone formation, Ethan felt the moment the scholar's moonstone merged with the boulder, initiating a grand and intricate ceremony. However, he sensed that this ceremony was not destructive and had no intention of stopping it. As the main stone formation activated, the ceremony's power reached into the starry sky. Then, a ray of silver-blue moonlight descended upon Ethan, bathing him as if he were in a hot spring, relaxing every pore on his body. Simultaneously, a wealth of information flooded his mind. You receive the inheritance of ancient druidism. You understand the power of druids from another world and gain the druid profession. Your druid profession level increases by +5, granting you the expertise Earth Guild and Moon Society. You obtain basic druid spells for your level and will learn new spells upon leveling up. You gain the druid ability, Wild Form. You understand the principle of the permanent elixir. You notice its connection to the druid wilderness ritual and have a sudden inspiration to modify the elixir's formula. This allows you to perform wilderness rituals regardless of level, and your wilderness form will correspond to the creature in the elixir formula. Earth Society. As a member, you will learn additional natural spells. Moon Society. You will be protected by the stars and the moon with the power of the wilderness in your blood. Wild Form. You gain the ability to shapeshift. Feeling the inheritance he had just received and his newfound understanding, Ethan finally grasped everything. He gazed at the dim stone formation, where the only shining scholar's moonstone among the boulders filled him with emotion. No wonder this is called Scholar's Moonstone. I thought there was some deeper meaning, but it's quite literal. This is the key to unlocking druid knowledge, with the power of nature being a mere side effect. He pondered the lengths to which the Celtic ancestors were driven by the Saxons and wizards, to go to such lengths using star ritual spells to embed the druid heritage in the power of the stars and moon. He admired the effectiveness of their method. Unless a wizard knows the turtle-style qigong and can knock down the moon, this inheritance will remain unbroken. However, Ethan also recognized the drawbacks. The inheritance hinges solely on the scholar's moonstone. If the moonstone is lost, it's as if the inheritance itself is lost. Reflecting on the inheritance information he had just obtained, Ethan sighed. Although the connection between centaurs and druidism still eludes me, I now understand that druidism's elements are woven into modern magic. With this inheritance, Ethan realized that druidism in the Harry Potter world differed from what he had imagined. At its core, this form of druidism is also a branch of wizardry. However, they diverged by focusing on nature rather than fully exploring their magical talents. This deviation led them to lose ground against traditional wizards, resulting in the eventual fragmentation of their inheritance. Despite this, their study of nature's power yielded significant achievements, many of which have survived to the present day. The most notable is the animagus transformation, originally a druidic ritual. After the downfall of druidism, wizards integrated its essence into their own system, including animagus transformation, as well as their knowledge of potions, herbalism, and divination, which absorbed a great deal from druidic achievements. In summary, while the druids in the Harry Potter world can manipulate nature's power, they pale in comparison to druids from other worlds. Others can awaken trents and summon thorns and vines at will, but they are limited to nurturing bowtruckle trees, planting biting cabbages, and using them in battle. Others can transform into bears, leopards, or crows freely, but they are restricted to transforming into a specific animal through complex rituals. Others can summon moonfire and cause stars to fall, but they rely on intricate rituals and formations to harness the power of stars and moon. Without his personal insight, this inheritance would have been of little use to Ethan. But now, with the inheritance fully realized, everything has changed. His druid profession is now complete, drawing from another world. Furthermore, Ethan also inadvertently improved the formula for the permanent attribute potion. Under the new formula, the main ingredient representing the corresponding attribute can be substituted with other materials of similar symbolic meaning. For instance, the Eternal Ox Power Elixir initially required the blood of the Reem cow, but now buffalo blood could suffice. However, Ethan chose not to pursue this option, as the permanent attribute potion now served a greater purpose. It could be used in wilderness rituals. A druid can perform a wilderness ritual every 4 levels, obtaining a wilderness form by absorbing the blood of the corresponding creature. This ability grants an additional animagus form every 4 levels. Though unconventional, it offers a unique advantage in the Beaufort. The ritual for the permanent attribute potion can bypass the level restriction. This means Ethan doesn't need to reach level 20 to obtain 6 transformations. Each transformation corresponds to the main ingredient of the permanent attribute potion used. For instance, if he consumes the elixir of permanent cow power, crafted from the blood of a Reem cow, he will not only gain a permanent increase of 5 points in strength, but also acquire the ability to transform into a Reem cow. This isn't just any transformation, it's a transformation into a magical creature. Can an animagus achieve this? However, the crux lies in the fact that since the transformation is based on the main ingredient of the potion, Ethan has the opportunity to select some magical creatures that are either special or powerful for his transformations. A person can consume up to 6 different attribute potions, resulting in 6 unique transformations. This is something Ethan needs to explore thoroughly. However, the moment for contemplation had not yet arrived. Ethan turned his attention back to his surroundings. Outside the stone formation, Marjorie and Larry had already approached, along with the centaurs who hesitated to step beyond the stone formation. They looked at Ethan with curiosity, eager to discover what he had just found. Chapter 70. A Druid Among Centaurs. "I'm sorry, Mr. Marjorie," Ethan said proactively before anyone else could speak. "I accidentally made the noise louder just now, and I'm really sorry for disturbing you." His words hinted at the recent commotion being intentional, which prompted Marjorie to regard him with a serious look. "No, Mr. Green, we centaurs have been too short-sighted to recognize your abilities," Marjorie responded, his face breaking into a smile that made his old features resemble a blooming chrysanthemum. "However, this is the sacred land of the centaurs. Such a commotion is hard to justify without a reason. Could you please explain what just happened?" "Of course, I am using your sacred land, after all," Ethan replied, his tone indifferent. I merely utilized your stone formation to receive some new druidic heritage. His casual mention made it sound as though he was already a druid, and the centaur stone circle was just a tool for furthering his druid profession. Marjorie, unaware of the intricacies, lit up at the mention of druid. You mean, you are a druid? Of course, otherwise, how could Larry trust me so much? Ethan said, patting Larry, the unicorn, who then affectionately leaned on his shoulder. To dispel any doubts Marjorie might have, Ethan gestured forward and commanded, "Plants grow." Immediately, the weeds on the ground in front of him surged in growth, transforming from mere hoof height to towering above their knees. This is indeed the power of the legendary druids. A wizard might be able to enlarge a single fruit or vegetable, but creating such a natural growth effect was beyond their capabilities. Convinced, Marjorie bent his forelimbs towards Ethan, lowered his head, touched his chest with his left hand, and performed a centaur salute, reminiscent of Ferenz's gesture. Dear Lord Druid, in accordance with the ancient contract, we centaurs would gladly unite under your guidance to serve the balance of nature. Please offer our tribe your natural wisdom. Ethan was taken aback by Marjorie's solemn salute, but the centaurs behind him, including Bane, who valued centaur dignity highly, showed no surprise. Instead, they mimicked Marjorie's gesture, showing their respect. This unanimous display of reverence momentarily inflated Ethan's ego, but he quickly composed himself, stepped forward to assist Marjorie, and humbly responded, "Leader Marjorie, you honor me too much. I am merely a novice druid. How could I possibly guide the centaur tribe? Moreover, the era of druids has long passed. To speak of service is excessive. I truly regard the centaurs as friends. Treating me in such a manner would be a disservice to our friendship." After much persuasion, the centaurs were convinced. Ethan understood the significance of winning the centaurs' allegiance. It meant control over the entire Forbidden Forest and a formidable force at his disposal. However, he was acutely aware that any form of cooperation must be based on mutual respect and strength. To truly win over the centaur tribe, he needed to possess a power that commanded their respect, something he could not achieve with his current abilities as a level 6 wizard, level 4 spiritualist, and level 5 druid. Resorting to an ancient contract to compel the centaurs would only lead to resentment in the long run. Ethan understood the potential backlash. After all, the ancient contract wasn't akin to a slave agreement. It was more prudent to curry favor, offer kind words, and foster a relationship with the centaurs. With time and effort, as his strength grew, the once illusory ancient oath would solidify into something unbreakable. Ethan hadn't yet tapped into the centaurs' more aggressive traits, as there was no need for conflict. With the unicorns and centaurs as allies, controlling the Forbidden Forest was achievable without further action. Persuaded by Ethan, Marjorie chose not to dwell on the recent events, instead revealing the details of the so-called ancient contract. The contract originated in the zenith of Druidism, a pact between the Druids, who wielded nature's power, and the myriad intelligent creatures sharing that affinity. The Druids pledged to assist these beings when necessary, guiding them without upsetting nature's balance. Should that balance be threatened, the creatures were bound to heed the Druids' call to arms in defense of nature. Thus, the Druids were acknowledged as leaders among these intelligent beings, and the lore of the Druids and their oath was passed down through generations. This is fascinating, Ethan mused, inclined to believe in the oath's authenticity. After all, the disappearance of the Druids raised a question. What did their demise have to do with the natural balance? The fact that these creatures didn't intervene as the Druid sect vanished was telling. Ethan's belief was further cemented when Larry addressed him as Lord Druid, indicating that the legend wasn't merely a centaur fabrication, but recognized by the unicorns as well. However, this acknowledgement brought its own set of challenges. As a druid, Ethan was expected to assist and guide these natural beings when needed. Ethan was aware that his awakening as a druid, facilitated by the centaur's stone circle, obligated him to aid them. Yet, with his own myriad responsibilities, dedicating time to the centaur tribe was impractical. To maintain good relations with the centaurs, he needed to find a solution. After some thought, Ethan proposed, "Mr. Marjorie, what if I were to train a druid specifically for the centaur tribe?" As a new author, getting my book noticed is challenging. Your support through automatic subscriptions, monthly reviews, and rewards means the world to me. If you have any votes to spare, please consider supporting me. Your help is crucial and greatly appreciated. Chapter 71. Ethan's Proposal. Ethan's suggestion to train druids for the Centaur tribe was quite innovative. Holding the scholar's moonstone, which was the key to mastering the druidic heritage, Ethan, after inheriting and enlightening himself, became a druid. This allowed him to control the scholar's moonstone and pass on the druidic power to others. However, Ethan had no intention of passing on the incomplete druidic knowledge found in the Harry Potter world, where druids could not fully harness the power of nature and were merely part-time wizards. He aimed to teach the true messengers of nature, ensuring the Centaur tribe could always have a druid's guidance without needing to rely on him, achieving a win-win situation. Really? Do you truly intend to train a druid for the centaurs? Marjorie was ecstatic upon hearing Ethan's plan. The prospect of having a druid to assist with tasks that were challenging for the centaurs, such as neutralizing toxins, catalyzing the growth of herbs, purifying curses, predicting celestial phenomena, and taming beasts, was beyond his wildest dreams. These were all tasks beyond the centaur's capabilities, and having Ethan's assistance would elevate the tribe's development significantly. Marjorie had initially hoped for Ethan's occasional help, but the idea of having their own druid meant a deeper integration of druidic spells into their daily lives, and a significant advancement for the tribe. In the Centaur epics, no creature other than humans had ever possessed druidic abilities, primarily because the druid profession in their world relied on wizardly power, which centaurs lacked. If Ethan could achieve this, he would not just be a child of destiny, but a legendary figure worthy of being immortalized in Centaur epics. Marjorie's admiration for Ethan shifted from respect to reverence. Upon Marjorie's enthusiastic response, Ethan modestly replied, "I'm merely doing this for convenience. It's not as grand as you imagine." He quickly added that becoming a druid was not simple and required meeting specific conditions. "What should we do?" Marjorie inquired eagerly. "Next, please bring all the young centaurs in the tribe to me. I will select the most suitable candidate and teach him the power of druidism," Ethan instructed. Without hesitation, Marjorie agreed, eager to see a druid within their tribe. He immediately arranged for the younger generation of centaurs, including all the foals and even the newborns, to be brought before Ethan, hopeful for the transformative guidance that a druid could offer their tribe. Babies that were born passed in front of Ethan. The whole process resembled an interview. Ethan sat at the table, holding a moonstone, surrounded by floating notebooks and automatic pens. Each time someone approached, Ethan asked them to touch the moonstone and recorded their basic information, such as name, age, and health status. He then asked a few questions, akin to those found in Muggle psychology tests, to gauge the general personality of the individual. This data was recorded with a pen on the side. After that, it was the next person's turn. Despite the Centaur tribe's population being less than 100, with only 20 or 30 centaurs lining up, the detailed information collection took Ethan about an hour to interview everyone. This meticulous approach earned him nods of approval. Comrade Ethan is a genuine person. Is Comrade Ethan really real? If Ethan himself heard this, he would probably not be able to suppress a laugh. In reality, choosing a druid apprentice didn't need to be so complex. Ethan only needed to cast an identification spell to find the one with the highest perception attribute, then use the moonstone to test their natural adaptability. These two conditions alone could filter out those centaurs capable of becoming druid apprentices. However, the basic information and personality questionnaire served another purpose. When Marjorie sought Ethan's help on behalf of the druids, Ethan already had some understanding of the centaur tribe. His positioning: short, staff-term partner, long-term subordinate force. The reason for conducting such a complicated questionnaire was not, as Ethan and Marjorie claimed, that only centaurs with suitable personalities could become druids. Real druids might have such requirements, but Ethan, with his personal inheritance, faced no such restrictions. Ethan's real intention was to legally conduct a thorough investigation of his future partners and the younger generation of his subordinate forces. This would allow him to find a fulcrum to intervene in the centaur tribe at any time. Most importantly, to choose a druid apprentice with the most suitable personality. After reviewing the notebook, Ethan had his result. The one who is eligible to receive the druid heritage is Daisy. Ethan announced this to the centaurs, then called out, "Come here, Daisy. Come to me." Soon, a green half-horse emerged from the crowd of centaurs. She was also a female centaur, appearing about 15 or 16 years old in human terms, with a beautiful face, rose-red pupils, and a slightly mature figure, hinted at beneath her clothing. However, what was most striking was her hair color. It's undeniable that most female centaurs adopt human fashion, learning to wear accessories and braid their hair like human women, but none were as bold as Daisy. She didn't just use braids as accessories. This young centaur had obtained hair dye from a wizard and creatively dyed her hair and tail hair into rainbow colors. Such a color scheme might be considered outrageous on others, but it looked surprisingly fitting on her. When Daisy stood before Ethan, the centaurs reacted with surprise. How could it be Daisy? Daisy? Just her? That rebellious girl? How can a centaur who dyes her hair like that be a child of the oak tree? Even Daisy herself was taken aback. "Mr. Green, do you really want to choose me as your druid apprentice?" "Certainly." The surrounding centaurs grew even more skeptical. Object. Daisy is not worthy to be a child of the oak tree." "Lord Son of Oak, is this a mistake? Lord Son of Oak, how about we test it again?" Hearing her compatriot's comments, Daisy's eyes filled with sadness and a lack of confidence. Even Marjorie couldn't help but approach Ethan. "Mr. Ethan, it's not that I doubt you, but can Daisy really become a child of the oak tree? I mean, are you sure there's no mistake?" Daisy eagerly said, "Did you really pronounce the name correctly? I mean, there are obviously many centaurs who are more suitable than me." Her words trailed off as Ethan interrupted her. "I know who is more suitable to be a druid. In my heart, you, Daisy, are the best candidate to become a druid, both in terms of talent and character. I firmly believe this, but if you don't believe in yourself, you can also choose to give up your spot. I'll just choose someone else." Daisy looked down at Ethan, and in the boy's eyes she saw trust, recognition, and a hint of disappointment. She was on the verge of denying herself, but suddenly she despised her own cowardice and self-doubt. Why couldn't she believe in herself again, just like when she chose to dye her hair with rainbow colors? Last time, she felt isolated and helpless in the tribe, but this time, someone believed in her. She didn't want to disappoint the boy before her, so she lifted her head and declared firmly, "No, I believe in myself. I want to become a druid." "Great, then come with me," Ethan said with a satisfied smile, taking her hand and leading her towards the stone formation. The other centaurs watched them leave with mixed feelings of envy and disappointment. "Thank you," Daisy whispered on the way to the center of the stone formation. "For what?" Ethan asked, puzzled. "For choosing me and believing in me," Daisy said, her eyes alight with gratitude. "That's because you are indeed the best suited to become a druid," Ethan replied, waving his hand dismissively. "But I still appreciate your trust," Daisy insisted, her tone solemn. "This means a lot to me." Then she shared her past with Ethan. She had cared for, it bottled up for so long, and now poured out her story. "No one ever supported me. I don't like traditional female roles. I want to run, hunt, and do things not expected of horsewomen, but no one in the tribe backed me up. They all mocked me, accusing me of breaking tradition and being a disgrace. Once, I decided to push their boundaries further, so I exchanged secretly collected herbs for hair dye. I used it all on my hair and tail." No wonder her hair and tail are like rainbows, Ethan thought. After that, the criticism and ostracization intensified, but I didn't care. I loved how it infuriated them. Daisy continued, "But still, I couldn't pursue my interests. I had to stick with the other horsewomen and their tedious tasks until you chose me." She looked at Ethan with gratitude. "So, thank you, Mr. Green." "It's all over, Daisy," Ethan comforted her, patting her shoulder, the highest point he could reach. "As a druid, you'll have the authority to shape your own destiny. You can hunt with the horsemen, roam the grasslands, or even do things they can't." Daisy's eyes sparkled with tears of joy. She had longed for this day. "Before granting you the power of a druid, there are some rules and precautions you need to know," Ethan began. I know, Mr. Green. I'll behave and remember to dye my hair and tail back, Daisy interrupted, eager to show her understanding. She knew well that since Ethan had helped her break free from the tribe's traditional constraints, she would naturally adhere to his requirements and rules, no matter what they were. Jan's life had significantly improved compared to the repressive days she had spent with the Centaur tribe. However, when she heard what she thought were flattering words, Ethan was taken aback for a moment before shaking his head in confusion. "Sorry, Daisy. You misunderstood. What I meant wasn't the rules you're imagining," he clarified. "I wanted to emphasize that the most fundamental principle of becoming a druid is to love nature and refrain from doing anything that disrupts its balance. Otherwise, you might find yourself forsaken by the power of nature. But I believe that, as a centaur, you wouldn't do such a thing, right? Moreover, given your spirit and level of acceptance, I won't teach you all the druid skills at once. You'll start with the most basic ones," Ethan continued. "However, I'll come to test you frequently. Only if your mastery of druidic power meets the standard will I teach you more advanced skills." Realizing that Ethan's so-called rules were not the constraints she had imagined and that she had misjudged his intentions, Daisy felt a mix of guilt and sadness. I'm sorry, Mr. Green. I misunderstood," she stammered. "Haha, it's okay, Daisy. I understand your fears." Ethan reassured her, patting her shoulder in a manner that seemed too mature for his age. "Don't worry, Daisy. I don't have many rules here. My only request is that you study this power well and grow quickly." "I know, Mr. Green. I won't let you down," Daisy responded, patting her chest with determination. "That's good to hear," Ethan nodded before turning towards the boulder. Just as he was about to place the moonstone into the indentation, he paused and turned back to Daisy. "By the way, Daisy, you'll soon discover that druid spells also include ones that can change your hair color, so you don't have to worry about your hair and tail losing their color in the future. Rainbow colors would look pretty good on you." Upon hearing this, Daisy's eyes instantly welled up with tears. She opened her mouth, wanting to express her gratitude, but the inherited moonlight had already begun to envelop her, leaving the image of Daisy transformed by the moonstone's power. Chapter 72. Marjorie observed the circle before her, where Daisy, the newly promoted Centaur Druid apprentice, had just completed the inheritance ceremony. She watched with a mix of emotions as Daisy excitedly tested her druid spell, causing a patch of weeds to grow wildly under Bane's feet as a playful prank, entangling his ankles. Daisy's triumphant laughter filled the air. Marjorie glanced around at the other centaurs, noting the envy, jealousy, and awe in their eyes. The rejection they had shown towards Daisy just 10 minutes ago had completely vanished. Marjorie sighed, feeling a headache coming on. What a troublesome choice, she thought. The decision to make Daisy the child of the oak and a druid apprentice puzzled her. Why had Ethan chosen her? Daisy was known as the most rebellious member of their tribe. She defied the traditional roles of female centaurs, insisting on taking on the tasks usually reserved for males, and even dyed her hair in rainbow colors, making her an outcast among the tradition-valuing centaurs. Yet, she remained undeterred, continuing to forge her own path and proving to be the most uncontrollable individual in the tribe. Now, as a druid apprentice, Daisy's status had changed overnight. She was no longer just a rebellious youth. She had become an important figure within the tribe, and by extension, almost akin to Ethan's disciple. This new identity stripped Marjorie of any authority she might have had over Daisy. The thought of the potential difficulties in future cooperation with Daisy was overwhelming for Marjorie. Why was Daisy, of all people, the most suitable candidate for a druid? Marjorie, though wiser than the average centaur, tended not to overthink such matters. However, if Ethan were asked about his choice, he would proudly respond, "I was careless on purpose." Indeed, Ethan had deliberately chosen Daisy, recognizing her unique qualities. Centaurs, as a race accustomed to living in the wild and skilled in stargazing, often possessed natural talents and high perception. Daisy, with her exceptional perception and constitution, stood out, but it was her character that truly caught Ethan's attention. Her flamboyance, rebelliousness, confidence, optimism, and enthusiasm made her the least concerned with tribal traditions, an essential trait for someone willing to challenge the status quo. Daisy's rebellious nature had already caused her to clash with the tribe, making her an outcast. The loneliness and despair of standing against the world is a heavy burden, one that Daisy bore with a smile, hiding her true emotions. In such a situation, the arrival of someone who could offer support and understanding would be nothing short of miraculous. Ethan, recognizing Daisy's underlying loyalty, saw an opportunity to earn her unwavering allegiance. By becoming a druid apprentice, Daisy's position within the tribe was transformed, offering her a chance at redemption and a new path forward. Ethan, belonging to a privileged class within the tribe, had earned a status that allowed him to stand shoulder to shoulder with the leader. This newfound position meant that all of Daisy's previous rebellious actions were now seen in a different light, transforming past disgust, rejection, and misunderstanding from her tribe into love, acceptance, and recognition. This shift allowed Daisy's confidence, optimism, and enthusiasm to shine, winning her many admirers within the tribe. Ethan had a clear plan in mind when he agreed to train druids for the Centaur tribe in the Forbidden Forest. His vision extended beyond this single tribe. He was willing to train druids for any other Centaur tribes or intelligent beings he might encounter in the future. Ethan's intentions were not malevolent, but he did have his own strategy. His choice of Daisy as his first student was deliberate. He opted to teach the druidic heritage step by step, based on the learner's capability, rather than imparting the complete knowledge all at once. He explained to Daisy that this method was due to her mental receptivity. While this was true, Ethan did not disclose the full reasoning behind his approach, which also served as a means of maintaining control. By doing so, the Centaur tribe's druid and any future druids Ethan might teach would naturally become his allies. Since Ethan controlled the complete druidic inheritance in this world, anyone wishing to advance in their druidic practices would need to seek him out as their mentor. This method of teaching fostered deeper, more enduring relationships than a simple transactional exchange. Furthermore, as Ethan had analyzed with Daisy, becoming a druid would elevate her and any future druid apprentices to the highest ranks of spellcasters within their tribes. This prestige could potentially surpass that of the tribe's leader, allowing Ethan to indirectly influence these tribes through his druid apprentices. This was Ethan's strategy for exerting influence over the Forbidden Forest Centaur tribe and potentially other magical creatures in the future. While some might view Ethan's tactics as manipulative, he felt no guilt. Providing the centaurs with druidic knowledge was, in his view, a significant contribution that could greatly enhance the tribe's prosperity. Once Daisy's druidic powers were confirmed to have the potential to transform the tribe, the centaurs celebrated with a banquet. They set up a bonfire in an open space, which Daisy ignited with a fire technique, eliciting cheers from the tribe and marking the commencement of the festivities. Ethan was given the place of honor at the banquet, seated on a soft leather seat with Margary, the centaur leader, and Larry the unicorn, along with his new student Daisy, by his side. The other centaurs gathered around them, with only a few female centaurs, including Daisy, present at the banquet. "This is my first time attending a banquet like this," Daisy exclaimed excitedly. Female centaurs gradually entered the tent, bringing with them an array of cooked dishes such as roasted venison on leaves, salads mixed with fruits and wild vegetables, wheat cakes seasoned with spices and cheese, and a special selection of berries and young grass for Larry. The feast continued until nearly all the food and drink were consumed, and the remaining female centaurs took their seats. Ethan sampled the centaur delicacies, appreciating the unique flavors of their cuisine. Compared to the refined French-inspired delicacies at Hogwarts, the centaur's cuisine was decidedly more rustic. The meat servings were large, the cakes were substantial, and the seasonings were robust. Despite the difference in presentation, Ethan found that their taste preferences were quite similar to those of humans. Overall, aside from the challenge of navigating the oversized dishes, Ethan thoroughly enjoyed his meal. However, he couldn't help but wonder about the source of the ingredients. "I don't think they engage in any large-scale animal husbandry," Ethan mused, his curiosity piqued about the origins of the cheeses served. As he was pondering this, a water bag was suddenly tossed to him. Turning around, Ethan saw it was Daisy, holding another water bag and beaming at him. "I'd like to toast you, teacher Ethan," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm palpable. "Thank you for choosing me and changing my destiny." Ethan opened the water bag and was greeted by the fermented scent of fruit and honey. It was wine, not water. Daisy noticed Ethan's surprise and quickly explained, "The centaurs brew it themselves. It's quite mild, so please, drink without worry." It was clear that the centaurs had no prohibitions against underage drinking. Seeing Daisy's eager eyes, Ethan nodded and took a sip, which was met with cheers from the surrounding centaurs. The atmosphere quickly became festive, with centaurs embracing, young males inviting females to dance, and the younger ones stuffing their faces with food while watching the dance. Despite their four-legged nature, the centaurs moved with joy and grace around the campfire. Then, Daisy approached Ethan and curtsied, a gesture she had learned from a young wizard. "Oh, Teacher Ethan, may I have this dance?" she asked, extending her hand. "Honored," Ethan replied, standing and taking her hand. Despite their height difference, Ethan's agility allowed them to dance together seamlessly. Daisy was radiant, her face flushed and sweat glistening, making her all the more appealing. As they danced, Daisy's admiration for Ethan, who was younger than her, only grew. The events of the day culminated in Daisy impulsively kissing him. When the banquet concluded, Ethan, having enjoyed ample food and wine, bid farewell to the centaurs and hurried back to the castle before dawn. His return was as grand as his departure, riding a unicorn and flanked by Ronan and Firenze, with Daisy insisting on accompanying him to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. "Daisy, Daisy, I regret accepting you," Ethan muttered, wiping his cheek. "Had I known, I would have taught you to respect your teacher before empowering you." "Hey, I'm sorry, little teacher," Daisy replied with a lively smile, unchanged since receiving her inheritance. Who could resist such a cute face? Ethan couldn't help but grimace, though Daisy knew he wasn't truly upset. However, Larry, the unicorn he rode, seemed less forgiving, nudging Daisy with his hoof. "Larry, please," Ethan chided gently. He couldn't quite understand why Larry's demeanor towards Daisy had shifted after their dance. Was it jealousy? Sensing Ethan's concern, Daisy reassured him, "Don't worry, little teacher. I'll soon master the animal conversation ability and make friends with Miss Larry." "Then it's up to you," Ethan said, nodding, his thoughts lingering on the night's unexpected developments. Standing at the edge of the Black Lake, Ethan halted Larry and dismounted. "We've reached the boundary of the Forbidden Forest. This is where we part ways. You should head back quickly," he said. "Goodbye, son of the oak." Ronan bid him farewell, while Firenze added, "May far Jupiter always shine high above your head." They waved their goodbyes. When it was Daisy's turn, the girl approached Ethan once more. She left a damp mark on his left cheek before embracing him tightly. "Remember to come back often to check on my progress," she implored. "Of course I will," Ethan promised. Finally, it was Larry's turn. After Ethan embraced her neck, Larry unexpectedly extended her head and gently nipped him on the right side of his face, leaving a mark of her saliva. Each farewell was unique, marking the end of his journey with these companions. Bidding farewell to the unicorn and the centaur, Ethan sprinted towards the castle, bathed in the early morning light. Chapter 73. Despite Larry and Daisy's earnest expectations, Ethan did not return to the Forbidden Forest to visit them frequently after returning to Hogwarts. This was because the final exams were set to begin in less than half a month. The mantra of every teacher seemed to be test, 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 with every minute being crucial for the students. As summer approached, bringing the exam day closer, the young wizards found themselves in a daze, unable to determine if it was the sun or the test papers that were causing their confusion. The written part of the exam was particularly challenging. The teachers provided new quills specifically designed for exams, enchanted to prevent cheating. The frantic rush to complete last-minute homework in the library was stressful enough, but the real despair came during the written exams, where reading was not an option. However, the practical exams would soon reveal that the written tests were, in a way, a form of mercy. In the Charms exam, the task was to make a pineapple tap dance across a desk. This test was relatively easy, and most young wizards managed it without much trouble. However, Ethan nearly caused a spectacle. He creatively gave the pineapple legs and dancing shoes, then made it perform dance moves he had learned from various MMD videos. The performance was so captivating that it almost caused a commotion among the onlookers. Professor Flitwick, with a stern expression, awarded Ethan full marks and advised, "Mr. Green, your dancing is excellent, but let's not dance next time," before ushering him out of the examination room. The transfiguration exam seemed simple but was tricky, transforming a mouse into a snuff box. The more intricate the box, the higher the score, but any remnants of the mouse, such as whiskers or tails, would result in points being deducted. For Ethan, transforming a mouse into a snuff box was straightforward, but creating an exquisite box was challenging, mainly because he had little experience with snuff boxes. Thus, he opted for a practical approach, transforming the gray mouse into a black wooden box adorned with dragons and phoenixes, highlighted with golden lines and a square indent for a nameplate or photo. Professor McGonagall was pleased with his work, recognizing the effort despite the unconventional design. Zhang Chu, passing by the classroom, struggled to contain his laughter upon seeing Ethan's creation, joking about how some students managed to handle the assignment creatively. Indeed, Ethan's urn box stood out, especially when compared to the less successful attempts by his peers, like Ron's box with a tail, Neville's with ears, and Seamus's, which was only half transformed. Transfiguration proved to be the most challenging subject, with only a handful of students achieving perfection. The potions exam, however, was a different level of difficulty. Snape's presence in the examination room cast a pall over the students, his mere aura causing distress and anxiety. His intimidating demeanor affected many, particularly Gryffindor students, with almost everyone except Hermione struggling significantly. The exam's focus on the forgetting potion seemed ironic, as many of the young wizards appeared to have preemptively forgotten their preparation, leading to various mistakes and oversights. For the potion exam, Ethan still held the potion in hand. The entire process took about an hour, but he managed to prepare it successfully in just 40 minutes, earning another excellent result. The rest of the exams were even easier. In the herbology class, the test involved dealing with white wine. Ethan playfully cast some druid spells on his white wine, which left Professor Sprout almost speechless upon inspecting the purity of the white wine juice. It was as if the fresh juice had been cultivated by her. The flying class exam was the simplest of all. One didn't need to be as skilled as a Quidditch player. Flying normally was enough to score high. For Ethan, a recognized Quidditch master, a mere symbolic circle flight was sufficient to secure full RKS. The astronomy class exam required students to draw a star map through a telescope on the spot. The defense against the dark arts and history of magic exams were the most monotonous, relying heavily on rote memorization from textbooks. Professor Quirrell had managed to make defense against the dark arts as dull as history of magic. When the ghost of Professor Binns announced the end of the last exam, the young wizards cheered, relieved to put down their quills and roll up their parchments. After the exams, it was time to relax. With a full week of freedom before the exam results were announced, the students took it easy. However, Harry and his friends quickly sought out Hagrid, concerned about a peculiar incident. "Isn't it a bit odd?" Harry said to Ron and Hermione. "Hagrid has always wanted a dragon, and then a stranger just happens to have a dragon egg. How many people carry dragon eggs around, especially when it's against wizard law? It seems too convenient that they found Hagrid." They learned from Hagrid that he had unwittingly taught the stranger how to get past the three-headed dog, Fluffy, in exchange for the dragon egg. Realizing the gravity of the situation, they rushed to inform Dumbledore, only to find he was away. A note from the Ministry of Magic, delivered by an owl, had summoned him, leading Harry to suspect that Snape or Voldemort was attempting to draw Dumbledore away from Hogwarts. After a recent encounter with Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, Harry's scar had been hurting, a sign he believed indicated Voldemort's return. Determined to prevent Voldemort and Snape from obtaining the Philosopher's Stone, Harry decided they needed to retrieve it first. "But what should we do?" Ron asked anxiously. "If we're caught, we'll be expelled." Hermione turned pale at the thought. Harry, however, had a plan. In times like these, the only ones who can help us are our old classmates. Quick, to the West Tower to ask Ethan, Harry decided. At the door of the Ravenclaw common room, a bewildered Ethan met the trio. So, you want me to join you in this adventure to retrieve the Sorcerer's Stone before the Dark Lord? He asked incredulously upon hearing their request. Ethan couldn't understand. He had made it clear he wanted to stay out of trouble, yet trouble had found its way to him. Chapter 74. After listening to the requests of the three individuals, Ethan hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing. He thought to himself, it would also be nice to have a closer look at Nicolame's Philosopher's Stone, and with my current level, I shouldn't need to be timid anymore. After acquiring the Druid inheritance, Ethan's confidence had indeed soared. Being a level 6 wizard, level 4 psychic, and level 5 druid, his combined combat power was equivalent to level 10 or above. Moreover, the magic he had mastered was mostly unexpected by the native wizards. With this advantage of information suppression, facing off against a level 15 wizard wouldn't pose a problem. And in the magical world, a level 15 wizard was renowned. In this new light, Ethan realized he didn't have to be as cautious as before. Furthermore, he was no longer alone. He could call upon Auror Tonks, Witcher Cyrilla, and the Unicorn and Centaur tribes in the Forbidden Forest for support. Miss Granger's current strength, although not sufficient, was not a concern for him. It seemed he didn't need to worry too much about Dumbledore anymore. Then let's do it. Ethan and the others agreed to meet in the evening, then departed to prepare for the big event. However, Ethan wasn't sure what preparations he could make besides giving himself a temporary buff. Speaking of buffs, after becoming a druid, Ethan had added new options to his pre-battle buff list: tree skin, making the creature's skin as tough as tree bark, and traceless, rendering the subject's whereabouts untraceable. He had no intention of destroying Voldemort, knowing that with 7 Horcruxes, Voldemort couldn't be killed. Late that night, Ethan used invisibility to stealthily leave the lounge and made his way to the 4th floor corridor, where he waited for Harry and the others. The door to the forbidden area was tightly closed. They obviously hadn't arrived yet. Within 5 minutes, Ethan heard movement on the stairs. Judging by the footsteps, it was an adult. The first challenger in the Hogwarts challenge had just arrived. Despite being invisible, Ethan still chose to hide behind a pillar. With the Dark Lord involved, caution was paramount. It was the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Quirinus Quirrell, who appeared. Even now, he looked wretched. He cautiously approached, cast a spell to open the door to the forbidden area, and entered. Ethan quietly approached the door, when suddenly a fierce barking erupted from within. However, Quirrell, having learned from Hagrid how to deal with the 3-headed dog, was well prepared. He took out a magic harp from his pocket, and though no one played it, the harp emitted a tinkling melody that calmed the beast. Ethan chuckled to himself, memorizing the melody. Soon, the barking ceased, and the sound of the trapdoor opening indicated Quirrell had moved on to the next level. Ethan had no intention of stopping him. His goal was merely to observe the Philosopher's Stone and, incidentally, earn Ravenclaw some points. When Dumbledore shamelessly awarded points to Gryffindor, Ethan felt it was only fair to balance the scales. With the current point difference between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor, unless Dumbledore was bold enough to award 150 points to everyone, Ethan's contribution would ensure Gryffindor couldn't take the lead. He was curious to see if Dumbledore would dare. After waiting another 10 minutes, Ethan heard Harry and Ron's hushed but still audible conspiracies echoing through the empty corridor. Despite their efforts to keep quiet, their voices carried. "How about it? You see," Harry whispered, "Snape has successfully passed Fluffy." Noticing the half-open door, they seemed to realize Harry removed his invisibility cloak and addressed Ron and Hermione. "If you want to back out now, I won't blame you." "Don't say stupid things," Ron exclaimed. "Of course, we have to stick together." Hermione, scanning their surroundings, added, "I guess Ethan thinks the same, right, Ethan?" How did you know I was here?" Ethan peered, looking puzzled. Harry and Ron were taken aback by Ethan's sudden appearance, while Hermione seemed unfazed. "Just a guess. You scared me like that last time," she said, sticking out her tongue proudly. "I've learned to anticipate the kind of mischief you're up to." Ethan, slightly frustrated that his prank had failed, remarked, "I didn't expect you to become smarter over time." With everyone present, Harry opened the door. The creaking sound was immediately followed by low barking. The harp's music couldn't keep the three-headed dog asleep indefinitely. After Quirrell's departure, Fluffy had awakened. Its three heads fixed their gaze on the young wizards, baring their teeth and barking menacingly. "What's that at its feet?" Hermione whispered. "It looks like a harp," Ron observed. "It must have been left by Snape. Ethan, you arrived early. Did you see him?" Ethan shook his head. The person here was Quirrell, not Snape. "It wakes up as soon as the music stops," Harry concluded, reaching for the flute Hagrid had given him. However, Ethan stopped him, not wanting to subject himself to their lack of musical talent. "Let me handle this. Phantom sound technique." The spell created a beautiful harp melody that filled the air. If Quirrell had been there, he would have recognized the tune as the same one played by his magical harp. Ethan had memorized the original sound and replicated it using the phantom sound technique. The music soon lulled Fluffy into a deep sleep. Its barking ceased, and it collapsed onto the floor. "How long will this music last?" Harry asked curiously. "As long as we need it to," Ethan replied. "If necessary, I can put it on loop. It won't hinder our progress." As they prepared to bypass Fluffy and open the trapdoor, Ethan began collecting samples of the dog's saliva using a head-soaking curse, filling 3 glass bottles. The others watched in astonishment. "Ethan, what are you doing?" they exclaimed. Ethan explained, "The three-headed dog is a guardian of the underworld in mythology. Its saliva a potent venom. This venom can be used to grow aconitum, a valuable potion ingredient." He also mused on the connection between mythology and wizarding history, suggesting that some myths might be records of ancient wizards' deeds. With the bottles filled, Ethan joined the others at the trapdoor. Ron opened it, revealing darkness below. "Dancing lights," Hermione cast, sending a ball of white light downward. "Even you've mastered that spell," Harry said, impressed. "Never mind that. Look below," Ron urged, as the light illuminated their path forward. Everyone witnessed the scene below. It was a drop of 8 or 9 meters, beneath which lay a dense mass of vines, thick and thin, squirming slightly under the light as if trying to avoid it, resembling countless earthworms and poisonous snakes. "What the hell is this?" Ron exclaimed, his skin crawling with goosebumps. Hermione recognized it immediately. "This is Devil's Snare. Professor Sprout taught us about it in class. It kills its prey by entangling it. It thrives in darkness and moisture and fears bright light and flames." "Entangle. Kill prey," Harry shuddered. "Then quickly use the fire charm or something to drive it away." "And then what?" Ethan looked at him as if he were a fool. "The Devil's Snare is here to cushion our fall. If we remove it, how are we supposed to get down? Do you want everyone to fall to their deaths?" Ethan knew how to use the featherfall technique to slow his descent, but he thought it reckless of Harry to suggest such a plan without considering the consequences. He sighed. "I'll go down first." "Of course not. You're the best among us." Ron, after hearing this, gritted his teeth and approached the cave's entrance. "Let me do the exploring." Ethan was a bit surprised by his courage, but saw no need to let others risk themselves for such a minor obstacle. He stepped forward and jumped. After a whistling wind, Ethan landed amidst the Devil's Snare. "Soft landing," he called out, despite the Devil's snare attempting to wrap around his legs. "Come down quickly so I can deal with this." He then moved a few steps away from the landing point. On the trapdoor, the three of them exchanged looks. Hermione jumped down first, followed by Ron and Harry. "Damn, these Devil's Snares are trying to eat me," Ron screamed shortly after landing. "Ethan, can't you handle it? Use your invincible magic to think of a solution." "It'll be ready soon," Ethan assured them, waiting until Harry had landed safely before he acted, without even using a wand. Plants wither. With this druid spell, he extracted a large amount of natural power from the Devil's Snare. The once wildly entangling vines began to lose their vitality, withering and turning gray. Soon the dense mass of Devil's Snare turned into a pile of dead vines. "What kind of magic is this?" Hermione asked, both surprised and curious. "It's really scary," Harry said in admiration. "All these Devil's Snares are dead." "Thank goodness you're here, Ethan. But why didn't you do this sooner?" Ron lamented, his body covered in red marks. "Because I didn't want Harry to turn into a pancake just yet, Ron," Ethan replied. "The death of the devil's snare is only temporary. They will grow back soon. We need to get out of here before that happens." "It seems we can only go this way," Hermione said, controlling the dancing lights technique to search the area. Finally, she found a stone corridor. Chapter 75, The Enchanted Corridor. The corridor stretched out before us, its silence punctuated only by our footsteps and the slow drip of water from the walls. This quiet was unsettling, making every sound seem amplified. "Can you hear anything?" Ron whispered. We all paused, straining our ears. Ahead, a gentle rustling and tinkling sound could be heard, as if something was moving in the distance. "Could it be a ghost?" someone wondered aloud. "I don't know. It sounds more like the flapping of wings," another replied. "Look, there's a light ahead. I saw something moving." As we reached the end of the corridor, a brightly lit room with a high vaulted ceiling revealed itself. Inside, countless little birds, shimmering like gems, fluttered and soared. Across the room stood a heavy wooden door. "Do you think they'll attack us if we try to cross?" Ron asked, eyeing the birds warily. "Is it possible those are the keys?" Ethan suggested, adding, "Maybe you should wear glasses." "My dad knows a very reliable optical shop," Hermione chimed in, always ready with a solution. "I'm not nearsighted," Ron protested, a touch aggrieved. "Besides, the wizarding world isn't as backward as you think. We have optical shops, too." As the conversation veered towards myopia and glasses, Harry brought us back to the task at hand. "Forget the glasses. We need to find the key that opens the door from among these flying keys. Do you see any broomsticks?" Ron scanned the room, then pointed excitedly. "There! Look, broomsticks! We can fly up and catch the key." "But there are hundreds of keys. It's going to be difficult to find the right one among so many," Hermione worried, her lack of confidence in flying evident. "But Harry has the talent of a chaser, doesn't he?" Ron said, excited at the prospect. "Think about it. Catching the flying key isn't so different from catching the golden snitch, right? We're probably looking for a big, antique key, likely silver and shaped like a doorknob." Before Harry could demonstrate his seeker skills, Ethan intervened. "Downdraft." With a command, the still air of the cave was suddenly filled with a strange wind. The keys, which had been fluttering like birds, lost their ability to stay aloft and clattered to the ground in a metallic rain. Ethan stood calmly amidst the surprise of his friends, as if the sudden change was the most natural thing in the world. "Look for it," he said simply. What had seemed a daunting task was now easily manageable. Quickly, we found the silver key with broken wings, inserted it into the lock, and turned it. The lock clicked open. Stepping into the second room, we were greeted by darkness that soon gave way to light, revealing a shocking sight. A giant chessboard lay before us, with black pieces that towered over us, carved from what appeared to be black marble. Across the board, the white pieces stood, their featureless faces adding an eerie touch to the scene. Even Ethan couldn't hide a shiver at the sight. "What now?" Harry whispered. "Isn't it obvious? We have to play chess to get across," Ron said, his eyes on the door behind the white pieces. "How?" Hermione asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. "It looks like we'll have to take the place of the pawns," Ron deduced, approaching an empty square. As he took his position, the stone beneath him came to life, and the adventure continued. Adapted according to the number of participants, Ethan saw Ron's eagerness to try and gently patted him on the shoulder to stop him. "You don't have to work so hard," he said with a smile. "We are wizards, so let's not exhaust ourselves solving problems that magic can easily handle." "As a wizard, isn't it easy to summon a few pawns?" Ethan remarked as he cast a spell, Level 3 monster summoning technique. A burst of light flashed, and 4 rock figures, slightly taller than them, appeared before them. "What is this?" Ron asked, feeling he had encountered many new spells today. "These are the chess pieces you'll be using. 4 earth elementals. They will obey your commands," Ethan explained. "Ed, so we let them play chess for us, right?" Ron nodded in understanding. "That's really clever." Although Ron was brave, he knew better than to insist on facing the challenge alone if it wasn't necessary. "Then, this level is all on me, and I'll arrange it. You take the place of the bishop, you stand next to him as the rook, you climb on the horse as the knight, and you go to the queen, the strongest chess piece." Ron said, displaying strong confidence. He was skilled at wizard chess, a game he played often in his childhood, a gift from his grandfather and his only toy. The Weasley family's financial constraints meant that Mr. Weasley's salary barely covered essentials, let alone toys. In this game, Ron excelled, playing evenly against an unseen opponent. However, the sight of the chess pieces battling was unsettling. The White Queen fiercely attacked the knight, knocking him to the floor and dragging him off the chessboard, where he lay face down, motionless. Such scenes were common in wizard chess, but on a life-size chessboard, they were particularly shocking. After about 30 rounds, with heavy losses on both sides and 2 of Ethan's summoned earth elementals shattered, Ron was visibly shaken. The thought of them being on the chessboard was horrifying. Ultimately, the Black Queen, under Ron's control, defeated the king, who removed his crown and threw it at their feet in surrender. Having won, the white pieces bowed and stepped aside, allowing them to proceed to the next challenge. Upon entering the next room, they were greeted by a foul stench. Ethan quickly cast a head bubble curse on each of them, and they saw a giant troll lying unconscious on the floor, a large bloody lump on its head. "Great, we don't have to fight this troll," Harry whispered. They carefully stepped over the troll's thick legs, with Harry muttering about the difficulty breathing. "Wait a minute," Ethan said, stopping them. "Before we leave, why don't we guess who set up this level?" "The gatekeeper is Hagrid's 3-headed dog," Hermione began, counting off on her fingers. "We've passed Professor Sprout's devil's snare. The enchanted keys must be Professor Flitwick's doing, and Professor McGonagall animated the chess pieces. That leaves Quirrell and Snape. Snape is the potions professor, and most of the challenges involve potions, so this must be Professor Quirrell's level." "But what doesn't add up?" Ron asked, puzzled. "Have you ever considered that if Professor Quirrell could use trolls for a challenge, why did he act so terrified of them on Halloween?" Ethan posed the thought-provoking question. Even Ethan, a time traveler who had read the script in advance, found himself puzzled by this revelation. Hermione and Ron, too, were plunged into deep thought, contemplating the implications. It seemed to hold some semblance of sense. Chapter 76, The Potion Puzzle. "We will eventually find out about this, but the important thing now is to stop Snape," Harry insisted, still harboring doubts about the old professor. He led the group through the next door, entering the penultimate level of the Zhiyong Dasheng, directly into Professor Snape's challenge. As soon as they arrived, a flame ignited behind them, sealing the door. This flame was an unusual purple color, and simultaneously, black flames erupted from the door ahead. The group found themselves trapped. A quick survey of the room revealed nothing menacing, just a table with 7 uniquely shaped bottles and a roll of parchment containing the final puzzle. Hermione picked up the parchment and read aloud, "Danger lies ahead, safety behind. 2 among us will aid your quest with the 310. 1 shall lead you forward, the other back whence you came. 2 hold nettle wine, 3 are deadly poisons in line. Choose wisely, lest you wish to remain here indefinitely. To aid your choice, 4 clues we provide. First, despite their cunning disguise, the poisons stand to the left of the nettle wine. Second, the potions at both ends will not aid your progress. Third, among the largest and smallest, no death will you find. Fourth, the second from the left and the second from the right, though different in appearance, share the same bite." The bottles were arranged as follows: 00000. Harry felt perplexed, and Ron was even more baffled. However, Hermione immediately recognized it as a logical puzzle, and Ethan nodded in agreement. "I've already deduced the answer." "It seems puzzles are nothing to you, Ravenclaws," Harry remarked, a hint of bitterness in his voice. Ethan corrected him. "We solve puzzles back in the lounge every day, but those are more about brain teasers and philosophy. This puzzle requires logical reasoning for a definitive answer. I'd say those with a Muggle education might have an advantage here. We learned this kind of logic in primary school, didn't we?" "Really?" Ron was astonished. "Harry, they teach this in Muggle primary schools?" I don't know," Harry admitted, anxiety creeping into his voice as he recalled his less-than-fond memories of Dudley rather than his education. Ethan and Hermione exchanged a glance. "Shall I take this one?" Hermione asked. "It's all yours," Ethan replied, ready to let the young witch shine. Hermione approached the table, analyzing the potions. Given that the largest and smallest bottles aren't poison, and the second and sixth bottles are identical, it's clear that the second, third, and sixth bottles aren't poison. Since there's only one antidote and one nettle wine left, the second and sixth must be nettle wine. The poison, therefore, must be to the left of the nettle wine, making the first, fourth, and fifth bottles poison. The potions at the ends aren't helpful, and with the first being poison, the seventh must be the potion to return, leaving the third as the potion to move forward. Her analysis was logical and sound. Harry nodded in agreement, and even Ron felt a spark of understanding. "So, Harry, you went to a different primary school than they did, right?" Ron asked, hopeful for some explanation of their differing knowledge bases. "No," Harry shook his head. "Ethan and I attended the same elementary school." He paused, reflecting on the vast differences between individuals that can exist even when they share similar experiences. Humans and dogs. Harry didn't want to dwell on elementary school matters, so he picked up the third bottle. It contained the potion from the puzzle. This potion is only enough for one person to drink. The four of them exchanged glances. Without much thought, Harry grabbed the bottle. "People say I am the boy who was lucky enough to survive, and now it's time for me to face him." Making such a life-and-death decision in a brief moment showcased Harry's true Gryffindor courage. However, Ethan had no intention of drinking. After all, the flame before them was not an ordinary fire. Snape wouldn't use something so dangerous against young wizards, so Ethan was confident he could pass through it. "Ahem, my suggestion is this," Ethan coughed dryly, drawing everyone's attention. "Harry drinks the potion to advance and goes in alone. I'll stay here and look for a chance to use magic to break through the flames. As for Ron and Hermione, take the potion to retreat and go back to inform the professors." Hermione and Ron exchanged looks before finally nodding in agreement. "That's all we can do," they said. "You two, be careful." Thus, Ethan and Harry approached the black flames. "Harry, remember my words before you go in. What you see may not be Snape. I've never believed he's the mastermind. Be mentally prepared. Plus, you don't have to defeat the opponent on your own. I'm here, and so are the professors," Ethan advised. "Finally, I wish you good luck." Harry took a deep breath, bid farewell to everyone, and drank the potion in one gulp. An ice-like sensation surged through his body. While under the potion's effect, he walked straight into the black flames. Hermione and Ron also drank the seventh potion, passed through the purple flames, and returned to the previous level. Ethan stood next to the black fire, recalling the spells he knew. He cast Fire Halo, Resist Energy Damage, Fire, and Elemental Shield, Fire on himself to resist the fire. Even then, Ethan felt a burning sensation as he approached the black fire. As expected of Snape, he thought. With his current level, challenging the Master of Dark Arts head-on was premature. But what if so? A thought crossed Ethan's mind, and he cast the spell he learned from his druid heritage, Original Form. In the next moment, he transformed into a fire elemental. "If I'm not immune to fire, then I'll become part of it. What can you do to me now?" With that, he stepped into the black fire again. This time, his attempt was successful. The flames couldn't harm him, and he easily entered the final level of Hogwarts' Courageous Challenge. As soon as he passed through, Ethan immediately released the transformation and applied an invisibility technique to himself. He was still in the doorway, and neither of the two people confronting each other in the room noticed him. This was ideal. Unless necessary, he wasn't prepared to reveal himself in front of Voldemort. He hid behind a wall in the corner and secretly observed the confrontation. It's not easy to launch new books, so please subscribe, leave reviews, and consider supporting with a monthly subscription or a one-time donation. Your support is incredibly important to me. Chapter 77. At that moment, Harry had successfully retrieved the Philosopher's Stone from the Mirror of Erised. Voldemort, having deduced this, requested a direct conversation with Harry. Quirrell proceeded to remove his turban, unveiling a shocking sight, a second face where the back of his head should have been. This face, pale as chalk, with glowing red eyes and snake-like nostrils, was a grotesque sight to behold. Ethan recalled the ancient Roman deity Janus Quirinus, known for his two faces, symbolizing beginnings and transitions. This imagery seemed apt for Quirrell at this juncture. J.K. Rowling often imbued her characters with names that carried deeper meanings, suggesting that in the wizarding world, a name could indeed wield magical influence over one's destiny. Voldemort, through Quirrell, attempted to coerce Harry into surrendering through a barrage of words. However, his efforts were in vain, leading to a frustrated and aggressive confrontation. In his attempt to flee, Harry was caught by Quirrell, and both tumbled to the ground. The contact ignited a searing pain in Harry's scar, while Quirrell screamed in agony, his hands burning as if clutching a red-hot iron. Just as Quirrell was about to release Harry, a figure emerged from behind the stone wall, swiftly joining the fray. This masked Gryffindor wizard, with only his eyes visible beneath a scarf, cast a spell that bound Quirrell's hands to Harry's wrists. Quirrell cursed internally at this unexpected turn of events, his priority shifting to freeing himself from the excruciating pain. Despite his efforts, Quirrell found it impossible to detach himself from Harry. Their struggle resembled a tragic duet, their cries echoing off the walls, accompanied by Voldemort's furious outbursts. The scene was as sorrowful as a wake. Ethan, observing from a distance, might have been moved to tears had he not been the one to intervene. Quirrell lamented his inability to reach his wand, realizing too late that his decision to use both hands had sealed his fate. The protective magic surrounding Harry retaliated with full force, causing Quirrell's body to blister and emit white smoke before ultimately disintegrating. As he vanished, a dark smoke escaped, marking Voldemort's departure. With Voldemort's influence gone, Quirrell's remains were reduced to a mere puddle, leaving one to ponder the significance of the backlash now that he was no more. A simple spell can change everything. This is the art of magic, Ethan remarked, reverting to his Ravenclaw attire before assisting Harry, who was suffering from a severe headache. "You're in a bad state. Do you need some medicine?" Ethan inquired, reaching into his pockets for assistance. Harry hesitated before selecting from the items Ethan offered. Potion demulcent or Muggle aspirin, choose one. Harry, not keen on choosing, snatched the medicine from Ethan's hand while still clutching his head and swallowed them both. Well, a mix of potions and Muggle medicine. Hopefully that does the trick. It seemed his guess was correct. After taking the medicine, Harry's headache significantly subsided. He could only be heard complaining in a strained voice. "You! What kind of cursed magic did you use, Ethan? My head's splitting." "But at least you're alive, right?" Ethan replied, patting his shoulder in an attempt to comfort him. "What matters is that it worked. And look, Quirrell, the perpetrator of this ordeal is dead. The Dark Lord has fled, and the boy who lived has once again thwarted the Dark Lord with nothing but his own hands, or rather his wrists, and a brief headache. It's all worked out perfectly, hasn't it?" "It's not just a brief headache," Harry protested loudly, then managed a weak smile. "But you're right. We defeated the Dark Lord and safeguarded the Sorcerer's Stone. I can't believe we actually did it." "Yes, the hero triumphs over the villain after enduring numerous trials, though this is only the beginning," Ethan remarked cryptically, then suddenly asked, "Speaking of which, I've heard you mention protecting the Philosopher's Stone, but I've never actually seen it. Harry, may I see your Philosopher's Stone?" Ethan's request wasn't made on a whim. He came prepared. Given Dumbledore's actions in the original story, Ethan had reason to believe that the headmaster was not merely indifferent to Harry Potter's involvement in the Challenge of Wisdom and Courage. He was well informed about the situation and had even taken precautions during the final confrontation between Harry and Professor Quirrell. From this, Ethan deduced that Dumbledore was likely observing them from afar, analyzing their personalities and planning ahead for the future Savior's training. With this understanding, Ethan still wished to see the Sorcerer's Stone. After all, as a studious child, it was natural for him to be curious about the Philosopher's Stone, wasn't it? And why the need to see the Philosopher's Stone? Over the semester, Ethan had made some observations about the process of enlightenment. For instance, enlightenment was more likely when one had a strong desire, was exposed to related magic, or came into contact with powerful magical items and original rules. This kind of enlightenment was the most valuable. A prime example was understanding the true druid profession through the inheritance of druidism. The Philosopher's Stone, being the pinnacle of alchemy, held similar potential. That's why he made his request. Despite knowing the Sorcerer's Stone's value, Harry trusted Ethan, his longtime friend and the one who had just saved his life, despite the ensuing headache. So, he took out the magical stone from his pocket and handed it to Ethan. Ethan took the stone, examining it closely. It was a red, translucent polyhedral stone that resembled a large ruby. However, in terms of value, it was infinitely more precious than any ruby of similar size. Upon touching the ultimate product of alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone, Ethan understood the ultimate secret of alchemy. He obtained alchemy specialization and learned the specialty, creating the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone, regardless of the world, held unparalleled significance. Just touching the magic stone and gaining such abilities nearly overwhelmed Ethan with ecstasy. At only 12 years old, he didn't need the Philosopher's Stone for its life-extending properties, but possessing it meant he wouldn't face financial constraints while building his floating city. Moreover, the elixir derived from the Philosopher's Stone could significantly safeguard his life and those around him. Among druid spells, achieving a similar healing effect required at least a level 7 spell, which wasn't accessible until level 15. Participating in the Hogwarts challenge had indeed been the right choice, given its generous rewards. Ethan managed to conceal his excitement, and after feigning another glance at the Philosopher's Stone, he casually tossed it to Harry. This act of nonchalance, treating such a treasure with apparent disregard, momentarily stunned the secretly watching Dumbledore, who inwardly sighed at the sight of someone treating valuable treasures so lightly. In doing so, Ethan unwittingly flaunted his indifference in front of Dumbledore. Ethan quipped, "Isn't this just a stone's throw away? We'll have better ones in the future." Harry caught the Philosopher's Stone Ethan threw, looked at it, and pocketed it, wondering, how are Ron and the others doing? Where are the professor and the rest? Ethan reassured him with a meaningful tone. "Don't worry, this is Hogwarts. As long as Dumbledore is here, they won't face any danger." Upon hearing this, Dumbledore, who had been observing in secret, felt a flush of embarrassment. Yet, with his thick skin, he silently approached the door, pretending as if he had just arrived through the fire door, hurried over, and exclaimed, "Oh my God, Mr. Potter and Mr. Green, I'm glad to see you're safe, and I hope I'm not too late." Chapter 78. Dumbledore's Arrival. Dumbledore didn't arrive alone. Perched on his shoulder was a magnificent phoenix named Fawkes, its bright red feathers and long, shining golden tail making it as large as a swan, with equally impressive golden claws. The phoenix, a magical creature, possesses the unique ability to apparate within Hogwarts, unaffected by the school's anti-apparition spells. Ethan suspected it was Fawkes who had transported him back after he was taken away from the mountain. "Harry has a bit of a headache, but I'm fine," Ethan began, taking the initiative to explain their situation. "It's just that Professor Quirrell." He gestured towards the remains of Quirrell, prompting even Dumbledore, with his strong resolve, to frown at the sight. "How did he end up like this?" "It might have been because of me and Harry," Ethan replied, his voice softening like that of an ordinary student. "I saw Quirrell grabbing Harry's wrist, and he seemed to be in great pain. I thought Harry's skin might harm Quirrell, similar to how he defeated the Dark Lord. So," his voice trailed off, "I used magic to bind Quirrell's hands to Harry's wrists." Harry, nursing his head, nodded in agreement. Dumbledore was momentarily speechless. The idea that the infamous Dark Lord could be defeated by such simple magic, including Harry's use of the adhesive curse, was beyond anyone's imagination. "The world is indeed full of wonders," Dumbledore sighed. "Poor Quirrell, he was merely a victim of Tom's machinations." Turning to the boys with a smile, Dumbledore apologized for leaving them to face the situation alone. "The owl Miss Granger and I sent out was lost, it seems. As soon as I arrived in London, I realized I should have returned. Fortunately, you had already resolved the issue by then." His expression turned serious as he looked at Harry. "I've neglected too many things. We must get Harry to Madame Pomfrey immediately." Taking their wrists, he joked, "Don't bind me to Harry this time," before giving Ethan a wink, likely trying to ease the tension from witnessing Quirrell's demise. "Fawkes, take us to Madame Pomfrey," Dumbledore instructed the Phoenix. Ethan, standing close to Dumbledore, couldn't help but marvel at Fawkes. Observing a phoenix up close was a rare opportunity. These creatures were not only beautiful and powerful, but also scarce. Their cries could embolden the pure-hearted and terrify the corrupt. Their tears possessed remarkable healing properties, and they could carry objects much larger than themselves. Apart from Fawkes, only New Zealand's Matola Macaw team had a phoenix as a mascot. Ethan pondered the idea of adopting a phoenix form as one of his 6 wild shapes, replacing the beast that symbolized wisdom. However, acquiring a beast from another world posed a challenge. He tentatively set a goal for the next semester to obtain a feather from Fawkes. Lost in thought, Ethan suddenly felt enveloped in a warm sensation, as if basking in sunlight, a stark contrast to the discomfort of using apparition, flue powder, or a portkey. Before he could fully savor this feeling, they arrived at Madame Poppy Pomfrey's infirmary. The smoothness of their journey, courtesy of Fawkes, made Ethan even more determined to acquire a feather from the phoenix. In the infirmary, Ethan relayed to Madame Pomfrey the details of Harry's condition. The kind-hearted old woman quickly escorted Harry to the hospital bed for treatment. After a short while, the therapist's expression softened. "It's nothing serious, but he may need a few days to recuperate." She then turned to Albus and Mr. Green. "If there's nothing else, please, leave now. The child needs to rest in peace." Upon exiting the school doctor's office, Ethan was about to bid farewell when Dumbledore extended a new invitation. "Mr. Green, after such a thrilling night, would you care to join me for some delightful food in the principal's office to unwind? I realized earlier that I was somewhat abrupt. There are a few details about your adventure tonight that I'm curious about." Blador said, his smile warm and inviting. Ethan had anticipated such a scenario upon deciding to take part in this test of wisdom and courage. He knew that if it had been an ordinary young wizard like Neville, Seamus, or Steve who had accidentally joined the adventure, they wouldn't have received an invitation from the principal. However, Ethan was different. Recognized as a prodigy, he was top of his class and held a prominent position in Ravenclaw. It was only natural for Dumbledore to take an interest in him joining Harry's adventure. With no intention of declining, and equipped with his hidden thoughts to shield against legilimency, Ethan felt secure. Dumbledore couldn't pry into his mind. Moreover, as a Hogwarts student, it was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. Aside from Harry, only a select few students had ever been invited to the principal's office. For most young wizards, it was a matter of honor. Thus, Ethan nodded in agreement. "Actually, Mr. Green, I've been observing you since you first arrived at the school," Dumbledore shared casually as they made their way to the principal's office. "You come from a humble background, yet you excel in both talent and academics. The faculty speaks highly of you, and you're well regarded by your peers." Dumbledore paused, then continued, "I once taught a student much like you. He too came from a Muggle orphanage, was exceptionally bright, and well-liked. Unfortunately, I was less experienced back then." Ethan's heart skipped a beat, well aware of whom Dumbledore was referring to. Yet he could only feign curiosity. "Professor, who was this person? A boy who was almost as remarkable as you, perhaps slightly less so. At least you surpass him in Quidditch," Dumbledore mused, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. Regrettably, he chose a darker path in the end. Ethan remained silent, not interrupting Dumbledore's reflection. Together, they ascended the stairs and approached the principal's office door. "Toffee finger cakes," Dumbledore announced the password. The stone carving at the door immediately rotated, revealing the staircase leading up to the principal's office. Chapter 79, A Late-Night Conversation. Ethan and Dumbledore entered the principal's office, where Dumbledore invited Ethan to sit across a large desk. Ethan's gaze was immediately drawn to the worn sorting hat resting on a nearby shelf. In front of the shelf stood a perch, upon which Dumbledore's pet phoenix perched. The phoenix, sensing Ethan's attention, glanced at him softly and fluttered its magnificent tail feathers in a welcoming gesture. The opposite wall was adorned with portraits of former headmasters, all seemingly asleep. However, Ethan quickly realized that this was a facade. The former headmasters were sneakily peeking through slightly opened eyes, their curiosity about him barely concealed. With a wave of his hand, Dumbledore conjured iced pumpkin juice and an assortment of snacks, placing them before them. "Please, enjoy," Dumbledore offered warmly. After ensuring the food and drink were free of any potions, Ethan took a bite of cheesecake and a sip of pumpkin juice, feeling a sense of relaxation and contentment, despite the intense scrutiny from Dumbledore. Finishing his piece of cake, Dumbledore smiled and said, "So, as I mentioned earlier, would you like to discuss the events of tonight, Ethan? I need some detailed information to share with others, especially since it's the end of the semester." "Of course, no problem, Headmaster," Ethan replied, having anticipated this conversation. He recounted the semester's investigations led by Harry and his friends, focusing on Harry's request for help, the significant breakthroughs they achieved, and the roles played by Hermione and others. Ethan detailed the confrontation between Harry and Voldemort, explaining how he managed to outwit Voldemort with a simple spell. He openly discussed his unique contributions, such as making all the keys fall or using a summoning charm to replace chess pieces, without specifying the exact spells used. "Ah, I must say, you embody both courage and wisdom, my boy," Dumbledore remarked after Ethan's recount. "You truly belong in Ravenclaw, though perhaps Gryffindor would have been just as fitting." "Thank you for sharing, Ethan. I've asked you many questions tonight, but I suspect you have questions of your own, correct?" Ethan understood Dumbledore's approach. This was more than just a Q&A session. Understanding a person involves both asking and answering questions. While asking questions can lead to guarded responses, answering them tends to lower defenses, allowing for a more genuine exchange of information. Dumbledore was adept at using this method to discern a person's true concerns and character traits. Despite knowing the broader context of the events as a time traveler, Ethan realized he still had questions that needed answers. "Professor, even though I managed to defeat the Dark Lord with the adhesive curse, I'm curious about why Professor Quirrell's behavior changed so drastically after his encounter with Harry. I believe a clever student like you might already have some theories, right?" Dumbledore responded, encouraging Ethan to share his thoughts. Dumbledore winked at Ethan, then explained, "The reason behind this is that Professor Quirrell harbors two souls within him, with the true cause of this effect being the Dark Lord himself. Although I did not witness your battle firsthand, I am aware of certain details. The Dark Lord possesses extensive knowledge about souls, but such practices are fraught with danger. It was due to this curse that Harry managed to survive the ordeal. Despite your Muggle origins, you might have heard about the incident from the past year. This protective curse remains active. The Dark Lord still cannot touch Harry, even through a host body. Unfortunately, Quirrell ended up being sacrificed by his master." Ethan nodded in understanding. He was uncertain about when Dumbledore had discovered the Horcrux, but it was clear that further research into soul magic was necessary. After all, he couldn't keep relying on the Horcrux without understanding it fully. Besides, he still owed Helena Ravenclaw a crown. With the arrival of the notorious Gilderoy Lockhart at Hogwarts next term and his access to the restricted section, Ethan saw an opportunity to delve deeper into the mysteries of soul magic. Ethan then proceeded to ask several more questions, including the designer of the challenges in the Philosopher's Stone. He also shared his observations about Professor Quirrell's unusual behavior over the semester, particularly during the troll incident. The office fell silent after Ethan's analysis. After a moment, Dumbledore responded with a hint of regret. "Perhaps. Your speculation is accurate. After choosing such a dark path, Quirrell might have harbored regrets and sought to draw our attention with his exaggerated actions. Indeed, it's peculiar for a wizard capable of employing a giant creature as a challenge to be overwhelmed by one." Ethan couldn't shake off a conspiracy theory that Quirrell's actions, including bringing the Dark Lord into Hogwarts, were part of Dumbledore's plan to cultivate a savior, using Quirrell as a sacrifice. However, he personally doubted this theory. Despite Dumbledore's flaws, such as his staunch belief in prophecies, Ethan believed him to be fundamentally good. If Quirrell had truly sought redemption, Dumbledore would likely have attempted to save him. Yet Ethan couldn't ignore Dumbledore's colder aspects, especially towards Harry. Analyzing Dumbledore's overall strategy revealed a chilling conclusion. Dumbledore's grooming of Harry Potter seemed solely aimed at delivering him to the Dark Lord as a final blow. Harry's fate in this plan was left to chance, showcasing a ruthless side of Dumbledore. If Snape knew his efforts to protect Lily's son were leading to such an end, he would be outraged. In reflection, Dumbledore's idealism could be terrifying. Willing to sacrifice his own life for his ideals, he wouldn't hesitate to use others as pawns. This realization left Ethan feeling a profound sense of sorrow for Harry's future. Fate had its own plans. In my opinion, Quirrell was a gifted yet fragile young man. Throughout his school years, he likely endured considerable teasing due to his timidity and nervousness. He was dissatisfied with himself and yearned to prove his worth. Like those who feel insignificant or even laughable, Quirrell harbored a deep-seated desire for the world to regard him with respect. It was precisely because of this that I appointed him as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Dumbledore said, his voice tinged with self-reproach. It's a tragedy that had he not encountered the Dark Lord, he might have evolved into a competent professor. In remembrance of Quirrell, Dumbledore concluded the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Green, for indulging the curiosity of an old man in the wee hours. I've enjoyed our conversation tonight, but now it's time for bed. I trust you can evade Filch and make your way back to the dormitory. Shortly after Ethan left, Dumbledore engaged in a discussion with the portraits of the former headmasters in his office. He is indeed a prodigy, mature, intelligent, and slightly ambitious. Perhaps he would fit not only in Ravenclaw and Gryffindor, but in Slytherin as well? Yet, he is undeniably a kind-hearted boy, and I am quite fond of him, remarked the portrait of Delise Derwent. Besides her tenure as headmistress, she was also a renowned healer at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. Her portrait graced not only the headmaster's office, but also the waiting room wall at St. Mungo's. He didn't even bring up the Philosopher's Stone. I probably couldn't have resisted mentioning it in my lifetime. Mused the portrait of Armando Dippet, Dumbledore's predecessor and the headmaster during Voldemort's rise to power. However, the other portraits took his comment lightly, considering he had been over 300 years old when he assumed the headmastership. I believe this just proves there's something peculiar about him. Who wouldn't be tempted by the Philosopher's Stone unless they already possessed one? Remark, D. the portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black, unaware that his words inadvertently spoke the truth. As the least popular headmaster in Hogwarts history and a staunch purist, he harbored disdain towards Muggle-born wizards like Ethan. Interestingly, an heir to ancient magic, whose name remained undisclosed, transferred to Hogwarts during his tenure. You once said that man was the most intelligent, most talented student you had ever encountered. Now, here's another who surpasses him. Given Ethan's thoughtful demeanor, I can vouch for his promising future, said another portrait. Ethan's arrival sparked a lively debate among the portraits in the headmaster's office. While most expressed their affection for him, a few remained skeptical. In conclusion, Dumbledore stated, "As it stands, Mr. Ethan Green is indeed a good boy. He possesses a keen intellect, remarkable talent, and ambition, particularly in his quest for knowledge, a true hallmark of Ravenclaw. Most importantly, he has a compassionate heart. He is willing to assist Harry and even recognize the lingering goodness in Quirrell's heart, a feat I myself have never achieved. As of now, he is far from becoming the next Dark Lord." Chapter 80. A Morning of Surprises. When Ethan arrived at the auditorium the next morning, he was taken aback to see that not only the Ravenclaws but also the young wizards from Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, and even Slytherin were looking at him with curiosity. It was as if he were Harry Potter on his first day at Hogwarts. Clearly, news of their adventure from the day before had spread. As he took his seat at the dining table, Ethan was surprised yet again when senior sister Cyrilla and Hermione approached him simultaneously. Steve, who had been sitting next to him, consciously moved 2 seats away to give them space. "You kid, you have to take risks without me, right?" Cyrilla sat next to him, giving his shoulder a hearty pat, her tone a mix of familiarity and dissatisfaction. "I thought we were good friends." "I'm sorry. If it had been a party, I would definitely have called you," Ethan replied. his gaze inadvertently drifting towards the pair of white thighs near him before he quickly averted his eyes. Before he could add anything else, Hermione took a seat on his other side and spoke up. "Sorry, Miss Leanne. Mr. Green only joined the adventure at our invitation. Unfortunately, we didn't think to invite Miss Leonlun. That was our oversight." Hermione's tone was polite, but Ethan could detect an underlying tension. Just as he was about to intervene, Cyrilla cut in. "What you just said was an invitation? But it sounds more like you were asking for help due to a lack of confidence." Cyrilla's words were laced with a peculiar emphasis. As expected, Gryffindors are nothing but reckless. We Ravenclaws need to step in at the critical moment. Hermione, feeling provoked, responded anxiously. "Then Ethan is willing to take action because he is our friend, right, Ethan?" "Friend?" Cyrilla glanced at Hermione with a calm demeanor. "It's better to have fewer friends who only bring trouble, don't you think, Ethan?" For a moment, the tension between the two girls was palpable, and Ethan felt an increase in pressure as their gazes fixed on him. The other Ravenclaws had already distanced themselves, leaving Ethan in the hot seat. However, Ethan, ever the peacemaker, quickly grasped the situation. It appeared that Cyrilla was teasing him, which Hermione did not appreciate. Hermione insisted that the adventure was their initiative and that Ethan's involvement was separate from his house affiliation. Cyrilla countered by highlighting Ethan's significant contribution and their shared Ravenclaw identity, suggesting a closer bond than with Hermione, a Gryffindor. Hermione argued that house differences were irrelevant among friends, while Cyrilla suggested that causing trouble made someone a bad friend. Realizing the underlying competition for his favor, Ethan decided to diffuse the situation. Channeling his charm and wearing his signature gentle smile, he said softly, "Why is there such a strong scent of gunpowder so early in the morning? Both of you are my good friends. It pains me to see you arguing," he continued, showing a look of sadness. "It's all my fault for not properly introducing you to each other. This misunderstanding could have been avoided." "It's not your fault, Ethan. I just think she's a little—" Both girls began to defend themselves, but Ethan smoothly interjected. "Perhaps you haven't had the chance to properly meet in the past, which led to this disagreement. But that's all right. Let's get to know each other now." Turning to Hermione, he introduced, "Hermione, this is my senior sister, Cyrilla Ray Allen. You've probably seen her on the Quidditch field. She's not only an exceptional player, but also a great friend." "Ethan, my partner on the Quidditch field, and also my fellow Ravenclaw, is Lau's best friend and always looks out for me," Ethan said, his gaze softening as he looked at Cyrilla. Cyrilla, feeling somewhat cornered by his gentle stare, shrugged helplessly and greeted Hermione. "Hi, I'm Cyrilla Leanne, but you can call me Ciri." Ethan then turned to introduce Hermione. "Miss Hermione Granger and I have been acquainted since our first train ride to school. Despite being a Gryffindor, she possesses the intellect and insight characteristic of a Ravenclaw, which I greatly admire. Miss Granger is not only a friend, but also a valuable study partner from whom I've learned much." Hermione, following Ethan's lead, introduced herself to Cyrilla. "Hello, Cyrilla. Feel free to call me Hermione." Ethan's enthusiastic introductions made both Hermione and Cyrilla agree to get along, not wanting to disappoint him. "Isn't this wonderful?" Ethan exclaimed, clapping his hands in joy. "Both of you are significant to me here at Hogwarts, my cherished friends and family. Your presence enriches my school life. If you were to argue, I'd be so worried I wouldn't know what to do." Touched by Ethan's words, both Hermione and Cyrilla blushed, their hearts fluttering. They quickly promised not to quarrel again, assuring Ethan they weren't the type to hold grudges. After a brief, awkward attempt at conversation, which ended in shared laughter, they left. Ethan's roommates, Steve and Roger, returned to their seats, relieved the tension had dissipated. "That was intense, Ethan. I thought they might actually start fighting," Steve admitted, visibly shaken. "They wouldn't fight," Ethan replied calmly, pouring himself another glass of milk. "Hermione knows basic dueling spells and would likely use a disarming spell for its speed. Cyrilla, on the other hand, prefers physical combat, but would prepare a magical attack like Burning Hand or Electric Claw first," he explained, causing Steve to worry about the potential for conflict. "As long as I'm here, they won't fight in front of me," Ethan reassured them, taking a sip of his milk. Roger, curious, asked, "But what if you're not around?" Ethan looked at him, amused by the question. "If I'm not here, why would they fight?" he retorted, making Roger realize Ethan's influence. "So, you knew they were fighting over you?" Roger asked, to which Ethan responded with a smirk. "Of course. If I didn't know, I wouldn't be able to prevent their quarrels." Roger, now understanding Ethan's approach, commented on how manipulative it sounded, to which Ethan replied, "I'm a charming person. What's wrong with using that charm?" He emphasized the importance of effectiveness over perceptions. Realizing Ethan's wisdom, Roger confessed his envy of Ethan's ability to make close friends so easily, lamenting his own struggles in that area. Ethan's handling of the situation showcased his diplomatic skills and charm, ensuring peace among his friends and maintaining his beloved school life's harmony. "My brother has such a good method. Why don't you share it with everyone?" "I don't expect to make two good friends like you. Just one will do," I said. "Me too," Steve chimed in, eager to join the fun. Although he was a first grader and didn't see anything special about having more female friends, he simply followed the lead of the older students. "If you want to learn a skill, it's very simple," Ethan began, pushing his cup forward, which Roger promptly refilled with milk. "First of all, you must have a certain skill. Without core strengths, it will be difficult to attract the opposite sex." "Uh-huh," Roger nodded in agreement. It made sense. A top student like Ethan, with well-rounded development in moral, intellectual, physical, and artistic skills, naturally attracted the attention of many senior students. "Secondly, you have to be able to speak," Ethan continued, taking a sip of milk. "Women tend to be more emotional, so it is necessary to maintain a good mood through certain speaking skills, especially when facing multiple girls. You might think this is manipulative, but I call it efficient." "Ethan is right," Roger continued to nod. The way Ethan resolved the dispute between two girls was a prime example. "Finally, and most importantly," Ethan paused, his serious demeanor causing Roger, Steve, and other nearby boys who had gathered to listen intently. Ethan looked around, then said slowly, "That's having a face as Han, D-sum as mine. As long as you have that, no matter what you do, they will forgive you." Cut. Hateful. Arrogant show-off. The little wizards who had been listening to the lecture quickly dispersed, their reactions mixed with amusement and disbelief. "Do you hear that? Is that what a human says? Although we admit what you said is very reasonable and consistent with facts, it has no practical advice for us. If we were all as handsome as you, no, even half as handsome, we wouldn't need to attend your lectures." Watching his classmates leave, unburdened by schoolwork and laughing, Ethan smiled. He then got up and left the auditorium, aware that there were only a few days left until the end of the semester.